Imagine you're standing in front of, like, a whiteboard in a corporate boardroom,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
and you have a staff of exactly 55 employees, not a single person more.
That's a pretty lean team for a corporate boardroom scenario.
Right. But your mandate is to manage, service, and retain 450 million active users globally.
Oh, wow. I mean, the math on that just immediately sounds completely broken.
It does, right? But here is the real catch. You are not allowed to run a single advertisement.
Okay, so no ad revenue at all.
Exactly. You cannot sell user data, and you can't hire like a massive sales team to go out and pitch.
I mean, it sounds like a riddle designed to fail a first-year MBA student, honestly.
Yeah, how do you possibly build a $19 billion empire under those constraints?
You really can't, right?
Yeah.
At least the math of traditional business just does not compete with those numbers.
But it isn't a riddle. That was the actual real-world operational reality of one of the most successful tech acquisitions in history.
And it was entirely driven by the decision to charge users a single, almost invisible dollar.
Yes. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the introductory chapters of John Warlow's book, The Automatic Customer.
We're pulling insights from that alongside some real market data on business valuations and, consumer psychology.
We want to reverse engineer exactly why that single dollar is basically eating the world right now.
Because we are in the middle of this profound economic shift, right? We're moving away from the exhausting traditional sell-and-do business model.
Yeah, and moving straight into the booming subscription economy, which is honestly everywhere now.
It really is.
Yeah.
So if you're running a business or investing or just trying to understand why literally every company on earth wants you on a monthly plan,
This is for you. Grasping this mechanic is absolutely essential.
because it's the literal difference between a company that just burns out its founders and one that generates predictable revenue.
And skyrockets in actual mathematical value. So our mission for this deep dive is to decode the DNA of this new economic reality.
All right, we're going to look under the hood at the psychological, the cultural, and the hard financial mechanics.
To figure out why a subscriber is infinitely more valuable than just a regular one-off customer.
And just to be clear, we are not just talking about software either.
No, not at all. We're looking at why companies across every imaginable sector are abandoning the transactional model.
And why consumers are actually demanding this shift. It's not just companies forcing it on us.
Exactly. Adapting to this shift is no longer optional if you want to survive. So let's anchor this with the story of those 55 employees.
Yeah, let's get into that because Warlow opens his research with this really relatable personal anecdote.
Right. It starts with marathon training. He was preparing for a race with a friend of his named Satya.
And anyone who has trained for a marathon knows you are putting in months of running and you rely so heavily on that shared accountability.
Oh, absolutely. But then right at the peak of their training arc, like 6 weeks before the starting gun,
Satya drops a bomb. He announces he has to leave for a 2-week business trip to China.
which completely shatters that entire accountability loop.
Yeah, you lose your running partner right when the mileage is, at its most brutal.
Yeah.
It's the worst timing.
So they decide they have to transition to digital accountability. They commit to texting each other their split times every single day.
But back then, there was a massive infrastructural hurdle with doing that.
Right, because texting from China using a standard mobile carrier, that incurred just astronomical international roaming fees.
Yeah, it would cost a fortune just to say, I ran 5 miles today.
Exactly. So Sasha suggests bypassing the cellular network entirely. He wants to use this relatively new app called WhatsApp.
And Warlow admits he was, highly resistant to this at first.
Yeah, he liked his default iPhone app. He didn't want the friction of setting up a brand new account.
Or learning a new interface,
Yeah.
right. And he especially didn't want to deal with whatever monetization scheme a free app would inevitably force on him.
Right, like spammy ads or whatever. But Satya explained the value proposition to him.
Which was that WhatsApp bypassed those expensive cell towers entirely by just running on the regular internet.
And the cost. The first year was completely free.
And after that, it was just this microscopic subscription of $1 single per year.
And that tiny, tiny pricing decision fundamentally altered the trajectory of the modern internet.
It really did. Because they didn't just solve a communication problem for people like Sasha, they solved a business model problem.
Exactly. So they finished the marathon, spoiler alert. But the real story is WhatsApp's trajectory after that.
Yeah, the growth was just insane. By early 2014, WhatsApp had acquired 450 million users.
And they were adding 1 million new users every single day. Just mind-blowing scale.
And then Facebook steps in and acquires them for $19 billion.
19 billion. And as we established at the very top of the deep dive, they did this with just 55 employees.
To really understand the mechanics of how they pulled that off, we have to contrast WhatsApp's model with the rest of the industry at the time.
Because the default monetization strategy for an internet platform back then was entirely the advertising model.
Right. You give the product away for absolutely nothing, and then you just monetize the user's attention.
But I don't think people realize the invisible operational bloat that an advertising model actually requires.
Oh, it's massive. You don't just need software engineers to build the app. You need a massive ad sales force to go out and pitch brands.
Yeah, you need account managers to deal with those brands.
You need behavioral psychologists. You need complex algorithmic tracking just to serve the targeted ads effectively.
And let's not forget the legal teams. You need huge legal departments to navigate data privacy laws.
Exactly. The advertising model essentially forces a company to serve two entirely different masters.
Right. You have the user who just wants a clean, fast experience.
And then you have the advertiser who fundamentally wants intrusive attention. They want to interrupt the user.
And Jan Koum and Brian Acton, the founders of WhatsApp, they recognized that inherent tension immediately.
They hated it. They wanted a highly private, incredibly clean messaging environment.
So by choosing that $1 subscription model, they completely eliminated the need for that entire secondary infrastructure.
No sales reps, no ad tech algorithms, no giant legal privacy teams.
Their revenue model was in perfect alignment with their user experience.
But I look at that $1 price point, though, and I have to wonder, is it more about cognitive load than the actual money?
What do you mean? Like the mental effort of paying?
Yeah, exactly. If WhatsApp had charged, say, 1/10 of a cent per message sent.
Which might still add up to roughly $1 a year for a casual user, right?
Right. But if they did that, I honestly think it would have failed.
Because a per-message fee forces the user into a constant state of microcalculation.
Exactly. Every single time you open the app, your brain has to ask, is this picture of my dog really worth a fraction of a penny?
Oh, that sounds exhausting. It creates decision fatigue instantly.
It does. But charging $1 just once a year, it bypasses the brain's financial defense mechanisms entirely.
That distinction right there is the beating heart of the subscription economy. It's entirely about the eradication of friction.
Every single time a customer has to reach for their wallet, you introduce friction.
Or even just like making a conscious internal decision to authorize a digital transaction. That's a huge friction point.
You give them an opportunity to pause, reevaluate, or simply just say no.
Think about the mobile gaming industry. It relies so heavily on microtransactions.
Oh yeah, constantly asking you for $1 here, $2 there for digital gems or whatever.
And the user is constantly bombarded with those friction points, which is exactly why those games experience massive user churn.
People just get tired of making the decision to buy. But a low-cost, recurring subscription removes that process completely.
The customer crosses the friction barrier exactly one time.
And after that, the value just flows continuously in the background.
They are completely transformed from an active buyer into an automatic customer.
And if you were running a business right now, listening to this fundamentally shifts your priorities.
Because it means you don't have to constantly squeeze every last drop of margin out of a single high-friction sale today.
Right. Instead, you're designing for continuous flow.
If you can make the decision to buy from you a one-and-done mental process, you unlock something far more powerful.
And stripping away that customer friction introduces this massive structural financial side effect.
Because if the customer isn't thinking about buying every month, your revenue becomes a mathematical certainty.
And that certainty completely breaks the traditional rules of how a business is actually valued by the market.
Which brings us to what Warlow's data reveals about the valuation secret.
This part is so fascinating and honestly deeply counterintuitive for a lot of founders out there.
Yeah, especially because Warlow previously wrote a very popular book called Built to Sell.
Right, which was basically the definitive blueprint for making a business attractive to potential acquirers.
But in this newer research, he openly admits that he made a massive oversight in that first book.
He says he didn't scream from the rooftops loudly enough about recurring revenue.
Which is pretty rare, right, for an analyst to basically walk back their previous work like that.
It is rare, but the numbers he was seeing through his current venture, which is called the sellability score, They basically left him no choice.
So the sellability score is this algorithm that analyzes companies to determine how attractive they are to potential buyers.
And the data they pulled from it is just staggering.
Let's break down those numbers. Companies that achieve a score of 80 or above out of 100 receive acquisition offers that are, on average, 71% higher.
71% higher than typical companies in the exact same industry. That's a massive premium.
And the primary engine driving a company into that elite 80-plus tier, it's the percentage of their revenue that comes from automatic recurring subscriptions.
But to really understand the reason behind that 71% premium, we have to look at how a financial buyer actually evaluates a business.
Right, because there's a core disconnect here. Most business owners believe their company's value is derived from its past.
Oh, absolutely. A founder will point to, like, last year's record profits.
Or a prestigious industry award they won, or the 10 years of brand equity they've painstakingly built up.
But here's the harsh truth. A financial buyer does not care about your past trophies.
No, you cannot invest in the past. It's already gone.
Exactly. A buyer is purchasing a future stream of profits.
And the technical term used in the research here is the discounted cash flow methodology.
I know. That sounds like really dry MBA theory.
It does sound like a textbook, but the mechanics of it are actually fascinating when you pull them apart.
So discounted cash flow, or DCF, is basically the bedrock of corporate valuation.
Right. In simple terms, it is a mathematical formula for forecasting a future stream of cash.
And figuring out what that future money is actually worth to an investor right now, today.
And the absolute essential variable in that formula is risk.
Let's do a quick example. Let's say I promise to pay you $100 exactly 1 year from today.
Okay, I like where this is going.
What would you pay me for that promise right now?
Well, I wouldn't just hand you a $100 bill today.
Right, because there is risk involved.
Well,
I might go bankrupt. I might just disappear.
Or even just inflation, right? Inflation will eat into the purchasing power of that $100 over the next year.
Exactly. So you apply a discount rate to that future $100 based on how risky you perceive my promise to be.
Okay, so if I demand, say, a 7% return to justify taking on that risk, I'll only pay you about $93.46 today.
Perfect. The higher the perceived risk, the heavier the discount rate you apply.
Which fundamentally drives down the present-day value of the asset, or the business in this case.
Precisely. Now, apply that mechanism to an entire enterprise.
Okay, so if a business relies on one-off transactional sales.
The forecasting next year's revenue is largely a guessing game. It's super risky.
Because it's highly vulnerable to market downturns or aggressive competitors or, honestly, just a bad month for your sales team.
Right. The buyer looks at that transactional model, they perceive a really high level of risk, and they apply a heavy discount rate.
They simply won't pay top dollar because the future cash isn't guaranteed in any real way.
But if a company has a massive base of automatic customers locked into a recurring subscription,
then forecasting next year's revenue suddenly becomes a mathematical exercise rather than a speculative guess.
the risk just plummets. And when the risk drops, the discount rate drops.
And the mathematical valuation of the company skyrockets. That 71% premium makes total sense now.
Let's step away from the math for a second, though, because I think an analogy helps here.
Good idea. Think of the traditional transactional business like a guy standing on a street corner selling apples out of a basket.
Okay, I can picture that. He's hustling.
He might have had a great week last week, sold a ton of apples. But when a buyer looks at his operation, all they see is the daily hustle.
Right. Will it rain tomorrow and ruin his foot traffic? Will a new vendor set up across the street and undercut him?
Exactly. A subscription business, on the other hand, is an apple orchard.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
The buyer isn't paying for the apples you harvested last season. They are paying for the root system.
They're paying a massive premium because they possess the absolute certainty that those trees will bloom again.
And the apples will materialize next season regardless of the daily weather on the street corner. The subscription model builds roots.
And that mechanism plays out across virtually every sector of the economy, way beyond just software.
Yeah, look at professional services. Accounting firms are traditionally valued at a much higher multiple than standard consulting firms.
Because their revenue is anchored in recurring annual tax preparation and monthly bookkeeping fees. It's built in.
Financial planning practices, too. They are bought and sold based heavily on client retention metrics.
Specifically, how sticky those recurring management fees are after a client retires.
Even a legacy hardware giant, like IBM, sees its stock valuation heavily insulated by its deep base of recurring multi-year service contracts.
The shift in mindset here is just critical for anyone listening.
If your primary goal is to build long-term wealth by increasing the value of your largest asset, which is your business,
You have to change your operational obsession.
obsessing over winning sales today might generate cash flow in the short term, but it doesn't build long-term equity.
No, it doesn't. You have to pivot toward guaranteeing revenue tomorrow.
And if you don't make that pivot, you are left dealing with the sheer, exhausting operational reality of a transactional business.
Which Warlow describes vividly as escaping the tyranny of selling and doing.
That phrase, the tyranny of selling and doing it, really captures the physical toll of the traditional model perfectly.
It does. Warlow actually shares the origin story of his 1997 research company, Warlow & Co.
They launched as a classic consulting firm, and the mechanics of that model are practically designed to induce burnout.
You spend weeks hustling, right? Taking people to lunch, writing massive proposals, just trying to secure a major contract.
And then finally, you land the whale. You celebrate.
But then the reality sets in. You actually have to deliver the work you just sold.
Right. The founder and the core team suddenly have to pivot 100% of their bandwidth into fulfillment.
You put your head down for 3 months, you grind through the project, deliver an incredible result to the client.
And then you finally look up from your desk, and what do you see?
A completely, terrifyingly empty sales pipeline.
Because while you were entirely consumed with the doing, the selling completely stopped. You are right back at zero.
And this creates just a violent emotional and operational whiplash for a team.
You are trapped in this endless loop of trying to balance supply and demand.
And in a service business, or honestly any business reliant on human capital, your supply is a highly volatile metric.
Warlow uses this really interesting concept of perishable inventory here.
Yeah, we normally associate perishable inventory with, like, a grocery store throwing out expired milk.
Or a florist tossing out dead roses at the end of the week.
But human capital is deeply perishable, too.
If you think about an employee's time, it literally expires at 5:00 p.m. every single day.
And you are paying a fixed cost for that time, regardless.
If you miscalculate demand and fail to sell enough work, your team is just sitting there idle.
You are bleeding cash. Every single hour they are unutilized. And that time can never be reclaimed and sold later. It's just gone forever.
But on the flip side, if you panic about the empty pipeline and you accidentally oversell,
then your perishable inventory is stretched way beyond its limits.
your team is working 80-hour weeks, morale totally collapses, the quality of the deliverable suffers.
And your brand reputation takes a permanent hit. It is an incredibly stressful, high-wire act to maintain.
I hear that, but looking at my own behavior and talking to a lot of founders, that hustle is often the very reason they started a business in the first place.
Oh, for sure. The thrill of the hunt, the adrenaline of closing a big deal.
Right. So if you move entirely to a subscription model where the revenue is just passively guaranteed, doesn't that breed complacency?
It's a fair question. Where is the incentive to stay sharp and innovate if your customers are just on autopilot?
Exactly. Does the founder just get lazy?
That is a very common fear. But the reality of the subscription model actually demands a much higher level of strategic innovation.
Really? How so?
Well, Warlow notes that a transactional business relies heavily on brawn, like the sheer force of will to muscle through the next sales cycle.
Okay, yeah. Hustle culture.
But a subscription business requires brain, when you're no longer waking up in a cold sweat wondering how to make payroll.
Because your baseline operating costs are already covered by recurring revenue.
Right. When that pressure is gone, your cognitive bandwidth completely opens up.
Think of the sell and do model, like driving a car with a manual transmission in, like heavy stop-and-go city traffic.
Oh, that's stressful. You're constantly shifting gears, riding the clutch.
Accelerating wildly to close a gap and then slamming on the brakes. It is exhausting for the driver.
And it slowly destroys the engine over time, which, in this analogy, is your team.
But the subscription model is like flipping on cruise control on a wide-open highway.
The engine is still working, obviously, but the RPMs are perfectly leveled out.
And when you aren't hyper-focused on shifting gears every 2 seconds, you can actually look at the horizon and navigate.
You can focus on real product development. You can focus on improving the actual customer experience and your long-term strategy.
The predictability of the revenue allows you to hire proactively ahead of your growth.
Rather than reactively, when the team is already drowning in work. It aligns the business operations with actual human sanity.
Which brings us to a really crucial turning point in our deep dive today.
Because the subscription model isn't just some clever accounting trick that founders invented to make their own lives easier.
If it were just a one-sided benefit for the business, consumers would have eventually rejected it.
But the data shows the exact opposite is happening. Consumers are absolutely rushing towards subscriptions.
Warlow's research points to a massive macroeconomic and cultural shift that's driving this demand.
He identifies two foundational pillars for why this is happening right now.
The first is a demographic reality that he calls the access generation.
Right. To really understand this, we have to look at the shifting definition of the American dream itself.
For the post-war generations, the ultimate symbol of arrival and success was ownership.
It was all about acquiring assets. You bought a house in the suburbs, you owned 2 cars.
You built a massive physical collection of books and records and DVDs.
But the data tells a completely different story for the millennial cohort and the generations following them.
In 2013, the home ownership rate in the United States plummeted to an 18-year low.
Now, obviously, the financial crater left by the 2008 housing crisis played a massive role in that statistic.
Absolutely. You had an entire generation entering a brutal job market saddled with unprecedented levels of student debt.
So the traditional milestones, like buying a house, were economically delayed.
But Warlow argues it wasn't just a matter of restricted purchasing power. It evolved into a fundamental shift in core values.
The psychology around ownership completely inverted. For the access generation, physical assets are no longer viewed as status symbols.
They're viewed as anchors. The phrasing used in the research is really powerful. Assets became a yoke restricting mobility.
Think about it. When you buy a car, you aren't just buying transportation.
No, you are taking on the yoke of maintenance, the burden of insurance.
The anxiety of depreciation, the physical footprint of trying to find parking in a city.
This rising demographic values nimbleness and experiences way more than accumulating heavy things.
They want the benefit of the asset without the burden of the yoke.
Like, why curate and store a massive physical library of CDs or vinyl when Spotify gives you access to the entire history of recorded music for like $10 a month?
Or why deal with the maintenance of owning a car in a dense urban center when an app like Zipcar lets you summon a vehicle for exactly the 3 hours you actually need it?
The concept of a sharing economy isn't completely new, of course. Communities have pooled resources for centuries.
But historically, sharing was geographically limited, and it carried really high transactional friction.
What shifted the paradigm was the second macro driver Warlow identifies, the technological reality of light switch reliability.
I love the light switch analogy because it highlights our baseline expectations of infrastructure.
Right. When you walk into your living room at night, you don't pause at the door, cross your fingers, and hope the local power plant is functioning.
You don't perform maintenance on the electrical grid yourself. You just flip the switch and expect the room to illuminate instantly.
We take that underlying complexity completely for granted.
And over the last 2 decades, the internet has achieved that exact same level of invisible, pervasive reliability.
Think back to the era of dial-up. The internet was a destination. You had to actively connect to it.
You had to tolerate that awful screeching modem sound and pray nobody picked up the landline in the other room.
It was highly frictional. But today, high-speed connectivity surrounds us like oxygen.
It is in our pockets, in every coffee shop, and it's even streaming into airplanes at 30,000 feet.
And that ubiquitous connectivity completely changed how businesses deliver value, especially in the software space.
Think about how we used to buy software. You physically drove to a big box store.
You bought a physical CD-ROM packaged in an absurdly oversized cardboard box.
And then you installed it on your hard drive. You owned that specific version of the code.
And if the company patched a bug or released a better version 2 years later, you had to go back to the store and buy a new box.
You owned the asset, and the burden of updating it fell entirely on you.
But once the internet achieved light switch reliability, companies like Salesforce realized they didn't need to sell you the CD-ROM anymore.
They could host the software on their own servers and simply sell you access to it through the cloud.
The business runs continuously in the background of the user's life. Updates happen silently.
Security patches are applied automatically. The customer literally never installs a single file.
So when you combine those two forces, the access generation's deep aversion to the heavy yoke of ownership and the light switch reliability of cloud technology,
You get an economic environment perfectly primed for subscriptions.
The modern consumer wants the result, they want the access, and they want it to just work flawlessly without requiring their active management.
And if a business fails to recognize that psychological shift, they are leaving themselves incredibly vulnerable.
Because if you insist on selling high-friction assets while your customer secretly desires low-friction access, someone else will eventually build a bridge between the two.
Which brings us perfectly to the most aggressive, market-dominating example of this phenomenon, the Amazon Prime effect.
Oh yeah, you can't analyze modern business models without confronting Amazon.
They evolved from a relatively simple online bookstore into an entity that is systematically automating the entire consumer experience.
Through Amazon Prime, and specifically features like subscribe and save, they are moving way beyond discretionary purchases.
They are targeting the boring, recurring consumables that literally run our daily lives.
Paper towels, laundry detergent, dog food.
By offering a small discount, say 5 or 10%, they convince the consumer to put that giant bag of dog food on a recurring monthly shipment.
The dog food simply arrives on the porch before the dog's bowl is even empty.
The sheer convenience is obvious, right?
Right.
But we really need to look closer at the competitive devastation that a feature like subscribe and save leaves in its wake.
Consider the consumer's mindset when they run out of a consumable product.
The exact moment they scrape the bottom of the dog food bag, their brain enters what marketers call switch mode.
They are forced to make a brand new purchasing decision. They have to decide where to go, what brand to buy, and how much to spend.
And in that specific window of time, their loyalty is entirely up for grabs.
They might wander into a local pet supply store because they saw a coupon in the mail.
Or they might just try a new boutique brand they saw on Instagram.
Switch mode is the battlefield where traditional retail competes every single day.
But the moment a consumer clicks subscribe and save on Amazon, they are instantly and permanently removed from that battlefield.
They never enter switch mode again because the dog food arrives before the trigger event running out even happens.
This is the critical insight here. A subscription model doesn't just secure your revenue.
It actively starves your transactional competitors.
When that consumer automates their dog food, the local pet store hasn't just lost a $50 sale that week.
They have lost the entire lifetime value of that customer's dog food budget.
Because the customer is no longer participating in the open market at all. They are completely off the board.
It is a ruthless mechanism for building a protective moat around your market share.
But I look at a trillion-dollar apex predator like Amazon, with their global logistics network and basically infinite capital.
And I have to ask, is this entire strategy exclusive to behemoths?
Right. If you are a listener running a local landscaping company, or an independent coffee roaster, or a neighborhood gym.
Does the Amazon Prime effect just mean you are destined to be automated out of existence?
Or is there a way to build a micro moat at the local level?
The data strongly suggests it is the latter. Subscriptions are not gate-kept by venture capital or massive global supply chains.
In fact, small businesses often have a structural advantage.
Because they can bundle deep local relationships with the convenience of automation.
Think about the composition of any local business's customer base.
Yeah.
You have a small core of deeply loyal regulars.
But the vast majority of foot traffic consists of what Warlow calls promiscuous customers.
These are the people who will buy a coffee from you today, but tomorrow they'll go to the giant chain across the street.
Because it's closer to their meeting, or they have a digital coupon on their phone.
They are constantly in switch mode, every single morning.
Exactly. The local subscription model is designed specifically to lock in that promiscuous middle layer.
So if an independent coffee shop introduces, say, a $70 monthly subscription for unlimited drip coffee,
the customer who buys that is no longer making a daily decision about where to get their caffeine.
even if the chain across the street offers a discount, the customer will literally walk right past it to go to the independent shop.
Because in their mind, the coffee is already paid for. It feels free at the point of consumption.
The local shop has effectively removed that customer from the local competitive matrix entirely.
It changes the entire psychology of the transaction. You stop being just a place where they spend money.
And you become a club they belong to.
Yeah.
Customer loyalty in a transactional model is incredibly fragile.
Because every single purchase requires you to win their vote all over again. By offering an automatic relationship, you bypass the daily election entirely.
Let's synthesize the ground we've covered today, because the through line connecting these seemingly disparate ideas is just profound.
We started with 2 runners discovering that WhatsApp's $1 fee bypassed the massive friction of international roaming.
We examined the hard mathematics of the valuation secret, revealing why Wall Street and private equity will always pay a massive premium.
They want the roots of an apple orchard, not a basket of transactional apples.
We looked at the dark side of the traditional consulting model, the emotional whiplash of managing the perishable inventory of human capital.
And how smoothing out revenue allows founders to stop riding the clutch and actually steer the car.
We connected that to the macro shift to the access generation, who view ownership as a yoke.
And who expect businesses to operate with the invisible, light switch reliability of a public utility.
And finally, we saw how the Amazon Prime effect uses the psychology of automation to pull consumers entirely out of switch mode.
Starving competitors of oxygen by literally removing the customer from the open market.
When you weave all of these psychological, cultural, and financial threads together, the core truth of this economic era emerges.
The traditional one-off transaction is an inherently inefficient mechanism.
It asks way too much of the consumer's cognitive load, and it places an unbearable level of risk on the business owner's shoulders.
The transition to an automatic customer model perfectly aligns two seemingly opposing forces.
The modern consumer's deep desire for frictionless, weightless access.
And the business owner's desperate need for operational sanity and predictable enterprise value.
It is the rare business model where both sides genuinely win.
The customer never has to think about dog food or server maintenance again.
And the founder can finally sleep through the night knowing the revenue is completely secure.
We've cracked the code on why the subscription economy is fundamentally superior and why the macro trends are forcing every industry to adapt.
But understanding the theory is really only half the battle. This leaves us with a massive practical puzzle.
It is very easy to conceptualize a subscription when you are selling streaming software or shipping bags of dog food.
But what if your business is entirely service-based and physical?
What if you run a restaurant with super tight margins and perishable food? What if you own a plumbing business, a dance studio, or a specialized consulting firm?
How do you actually design and implement a recurring revenue model in the messy physical world without going bankrupt trying to invent a new technology platform?
That is the exact puzzle we are going to solve next. We will leave you to look at your own business and ask yourself where the friction really lies.
Because next time, we're diving into the specific, surprisingly adaptable models you can use to build an automatic customer base into literally any industry on Earth. Facebook did not pay $19 billion for WhatsApp because they had the best code.
Right. Not even close.
I mean, they didn't pay that astronomical sum because WhatsApp had, the funniest ads or the most aggressive marketing team or some massive army of engineers.
Yeah, people always assume it was a talent acquisition, but...
Exactly, but it wasn't. At the time of the acquisition, WhatsApp had exactly 55 people on staff.
55.
55. Just think about the math on that for a second. Facebook paid roughly $345 million per employee.
Which is just staggering when you say it out loud.
It's absurd. But the talent wasn't the real asset there. And the underlying technology wasn't even the main asset.
No, it was something much simpler.
They paid $19 billion because of a simple, almost invisible $1 a year fee that WhatsApp charged its users.
Just $1.
Just $1. And that single, tiny point of friction created 450 million automatic customers.
It's such a brilliant hook, really, because it perfectly captures the ultimate tension in modern business architecture right now.
Exactly.
If you look at the landscape of commerce today, you see these two completely different paradigms operating simultaneously, right?
You really do. It's like two different worlds.
Totally. So on one side, you have the traditional model. And this is the exhaustion of waking up on the first of every single month, staring at a spreadsheet, and knowing your revenue has just reset to zero.
The dreaded zero.
Right. It is the pure, unadulterated anxiety of having to go out and hunt for every single dollar just to keep the lights on, just to cover your overhead.
And on the other side?
On the other side, you have the compounding, quiet, unstoppable momentum of recurring revenue.
The automatic customer.
Exactly. We are witnessing a fundamental divide here. And understanding the mechanics of this shift, I mean, it isn't just an academic exercise.
No, not at all.
It is quite literally the difference between your business scaling predictably over the next decade or being completely cannibalized by a competitor who is operating on a model you didn't even realize you were competing against.
That is the power of an automatic customer.
Ugh.
And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we're tearing apart the math, the operational logistics, and the deep psychology behind the subscription economy.
There is so much psychology in this.
Oh, massive amounts. We are using the core concepts from John Warlow's research as our map for this deep dive.
Specifically looking at who actually wins in this new economy.
Right, and why turning your one-off buyers into an appreciating asset is really the only sustainable path forward.
It's survival at this point.
It really is. So whether you are managing a P&L right now, or you're trying to scale an agency, or maybe running a local retail shop, or even directing strategy at a Fortune 500 company, the mechanics we are about to break down will fundamentally change how you value your own business.
You're going to look at your entire revenue model differently.
Completely differently. We are going to look past the sort of surface level idea of a simple subscription box and dive into how recurring revenue structurally alters consumer behavior.
And a financial valuation.
And operational sanity, which is huge.
The sanity part might be the most important part.
Oh, absolutely. So to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to start by dismantling the biggest misconception about subscriptions.
Right, because most people look at a subscription as just a billing mechanism.
Like a payment plan.
Exactly. It's a way to spread out payments or automated delivery. But when you look at the companies dominating this space, the real heavyweights, they aren't using subscriptions just for predictable cash flow.
No, they are weaponizing it.
They are weaponizing the subscription model to completely rewire consumer psychology. And honestly, there is no better or more terrifying case study for this than Amazon Prime.
Oh, Amazon Prime is the ultimate example. Because when Prime launched back in 2005, it wasn't the massive, all-encompassing lifestyle bundle that it is today.
Right. No streaming video, no music.
No grocery delivery. It was literally just a $79 annual fee for free 2-day shipping.
Which, on the surface, looks like a terrible financial decision for Amazon.
Horrible. The shipping costs far exceeded the $79 fee for basically any active user.
But Vijay Ravindran, who worked on the team that originally launched Prime, he's been very clear about this.
What did he say?
He said the fee itself was never the point. It wasn't about covering freight costs at all.
Wow. So what was it?
It was a behavioral modifier masquerading as a shipping discount.
A behavioral modifier. That is such an intense phrase.
It is, but it's exactly what it is. To understand the mechanics of this, we really have to look at behavioral economics.
Specifically the sunk cost fallacy, right?
Yes, sunk cost and loss aversion. So when a consumer pays an upfront fee, that's $79 back then, or the $139 it costs today, their brain immediately categorizes that money as a loss.
Unless they use it.
Exactly. Unless they can extract equivalent value from it. The human brain just hates losing money.
We absolutely despise it.
So the moment you subscribe to Prime, you experience this psychological shift. Your primary goal is no longer finding the best deal on the internet.
Which is what it used to be.
Right. Your primary goal suddenly becomes recovering my sunk cost by maximizing my use of free shipping.
That makes perfect sense.
Amazon effectively charges you a fee to stop you from ever comparison shopping again.
They buy your absolute loyalty.
And they make you pay for the privilege.
That is just brilliant. And the data on this is staggering. Let's look at the Morningstar numbers from the source material.
Yeah, those numbers are wild.
So an average non-Prime member spends about $505 a year on Amazon.
Okay, so $500.
Right. They treat Amazon like any other store. They go there when they need a specific book or, a specific cable.
A one-off purchase.
Exactly. But an average Prime member, they spend $1,224 annually.
More than double.
Way more than double. That isn't just a slight bump in engagement. That is a fundamental behavioral shift.
They are channeling everything through Amazon.
Everything. And the most crucial part of this equation is the bottom line.
Because of the fulfillment costs.
Right. Morningstar calculated that even after you factor in the massive logistical costs of fulfilling all those separate 2-day shipping orders.
And the server costs for streaming, the licensing deals.
All of it. The average Prime member still yields Amazon $78 more in pure bottom line profit every single year compared to a typical customer.
Wow, $78 of pure profit delta.
Per person.
And that $78 is basically the moat they've built. Because once they are inside the walls of your household budget via that subscription, they just start taking over entirely unrelated categories.
Oh, they creep into everything.
Which brings us to the story of the running room. This perfectly illustrates the cognitive dissonance the modern consumer faces today.
I love this example. So the author talks about needing a new pair of New Balance running shoes.
Right. And under normal circumstances, the logical, historically ingrained behavior is to walk down the street to the local specialized shoe store.
The running room.
The running room. And it's a great local business. They have knowledgeable staff.
They sponsor local 5Ks?
Exactly. They provide real community value. But he doesn't go there.
Nope.
He bypasses a vastly superior local experience because he is a Prime member. He clicks a button and buys the sneakers from a warehouse 3 states away.
And the mechanics of that decision are just brutal for the local retailer.
How stating?
Because the running room didn't lose that customer because their customer service degraded.
No.
They didn't lose the sale because their shoes were defective or even because their prices were gouging the customer.
Right. They lost that sale because Amazon successfully consolidated that customer's buying behavior through a completely unrelated subscription.
Unrelated. The customer's literally sitting there thinking, well, I already paid for shipping back in January when my Prime renewed. So if I drive down to the running room and buy these shoes, I am essentially paying a premium because I'm not utilizing the free shipping I already paid for.
Which is completely irrational when you really think about it, but psychologically it feels true.
It feels like a loss.
Yeah.
So the local store isn't competing on shoe quality or community presence anymore.
They can't?
They're competing against the consumer's desperate psychological need to validate their previous Prime purchase.
It operates exactly like a Trojan horse. Amazon gets inside your house with the promise of 2-day shipping on an electronics cable, and suddenly
they're doing your groceries.
They are taking over the diaper purchases, the laundry detergent, the bulk pantry items.
We see this escalating with programs like Amazon Fresh, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They charged hundreds of dollars a year in certain markets just for the privilege of getting grocery delivery.
Just for the privilege.
Or the subscribe and save program. That one is particularly brilliant.
How did that one work again?
They offer you a 15% discount if you just let them automatically send you 5 items a month.
Ah, right, the automation.
They are commoditizing every single repetitive action in your daily life.
Yeah.
They are removing the friction of choice entirely.
And when you remove the friction of choice, traditional brand loyalty completely disintegrates.
It's gone.
But wait, I have to challenge this premise a little bit, especially for anyone listening right now who isn't backed by, a sovereign wealth fund or institutional venture capital.
Fair enough. Amazon is a monster.
Right. Amazon is a behemoth. We are talking about a company that can literally afford to run a global logistics network at a massive loss for years just to starve out the competition.
They did exactly that.
So if I'm paying $10 a month for a subscription to a local coffee shop, or maybe a niche B2B software tool, I still have to physically walk to the shop, right?
Right.
Or I still have to log into the software. Convenience isn't the primary driver in the same way 2-day shipping is.
It's a different scale.
So how does this so-called moat actually work for a normal business when you can't rely on a $1 trillion supply chain to force the lock-in? I mean, isn't the subscription economy ultimately a rich man's game?
That is a critical pushback, but I think it misidentifies what the moat actually is.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The moat isn't the fulfillment network. The fulfillment network is just Amazon's specific delivery mechanism.
Right.
The actual moat is the removal of the decision-making process.
Okay.
Let's break down your local coffee shop example. If a customer pays $30 a month for unlimited drip coffee at a local cafe, you haven't given them a logistics advantage.
No, I haven't built a drone delivery system.
Exactly. You have given them a psychological advantage. On a Tuesday morning when they are running late for work, they do not stand in their kitchen and debate whether to go to Starbucks, your local cafe, or make coffee at home.
Because the decision is already made.
The financial decision was already made on the first of the month. Their brain takes the path of least resistance.
Going anywhere else feels like wasting the $30 they already spent.
Exactly. You have successfully changed their default behavior. You don't need Amazon's warehouses to leverage Amazon's psychology.
Wow. That's powerful.
You just need to restructure your offer so that choosing your competitor feels like a financial loss to the consumer.
That completely reframes the entire concept for me. It's less about buying a logistical advantage and way more about buying a blindfold to other options.
A blindfold is a great way to put it.
And this operational shift from fighting for every single transaction to locking in that default behavior, it leads directly into how the financial markets value these businesses.
This is where things get really lucrative.
Because when you shift from a transactional model to a recurring one, you don't just change your top-line revenue, you fundamentally alter the underlying valuation of the asset itself.
This is where we have to transition from talking like marketers to talking like acquirers.
Put on our private equity hats.
Exactly. When a private equity firm or a strategic buyer or even just a local competitor looks at acquiring a company, they are not buying your past achievements.
Right.
They do not care about the industry award you won 3 years ago.
They definitely don't care.
And frankly, they do not care how hard you work to build the brand. They are buying one thing and one thing only.
A predictable future stream of profits.
Yes. And they assess risk when valuing that stream. Transactional revenue is incredibly high risk.
Because you have to start from scratch every month.
Exactly. It requires constant, flawlessly executed sales and marketing efforts to replicate every single month. But recurring revenue is low risk because the default action is retention, not acquisition.
To put hard numbers to this, we really need to look at the sellability score data from the deep dive.
Yeah, Warlow's firm crunched a ton of data for this.
They analyzed thousands of businesses to determine what specific variables drive up an acquisition offer.
So they index scores out of 100.
Right. The index scores businesses out of 100. And if a business scores 80 or above on this index, they receive acquisition offers that are, on average, 71% higher than a typical business in their exact same industry.
71% higher.
Just massive. And they aren't 71% larger in headcount. They don't necessarily have 71% more market share.
So what's driving the premium?
The premium is driven almost entirely by the proportion of their revenue that is recurring. The market pays a massive premium for predictability.
To really illustrate the mechanics of this valuation multiplier, let's look at the B2B home security industry.
Okay, let's dig into that.
This is a classic bifurcated revenue model. A home security company has two distinct streams of income. First, you have the one-shot installation revenue.
Right, the initial setup.
Exactly. This is the money you make when you send a technician in a truck to a client's facility, drill holes in the drywall, run the wiring, install the keypads, the cameras.
It's a huge, high-friction, one-time sale.
Highly labor-intensive. Second, you have the monthly monitoring revenue. This is the subscription fee the client pays for your company to route those camera feeds to a server and ping the police if an alarm triggers.
And acquirers treat those $2 completely differently on the P&L, don't they?
Totally differently. According to the data, if you try to sell that security business, an acquirer will typically value the one-shot installation revenue at a massive discount.
How much of a discount?
They will pay roughly 75 cents for every $1 of installation revenue you generate.
75 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, because they discount it because it's entirely dependent on hustle. If your top salesperson quits tomorrow, or if the housing market slows down, that installation revenue plummets.
It's highly volatile.
Extremely. But the monitoring revenue, the subscription, is a completely different asset class.
How is that valued?
Acquirers will typically pay $2 for every $1 of that recurring monitoring revenue.
$2.
It is valued at an exponential premium.
Okay, let's do the math on what that means for a business owner, because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Let's do it.
Imagine two security companies. They are both doing exactly $5 million a year in total revenue.
Okay, $5 million.
Company A makes 100% of its money from new installations.
They are constantly hunting.
Constantly hunting. So an acquirer looks at Company A and offers them, what, $3.75 million to buy the business?
Right, because of the discount.
Right. But Company B also makes $5 million a year. Except they stopped doing new installations years ago. They just collect monitoring fees from their existing base.
They're just farming.
Exactly. An acquirer looks at Company B and offers them $10 million.
$10 million versus 3.75.
Is the exact same top-line revenue in the exact same industry, but the owner of the subscription business walks away nearly 3 times richer.
Because they built an asset that generates cash flow independently of their daily labor.
It's incredible. But, the valuation is really just the final payday.
The exit.
Right. What Warlow points out in the source material is that the real tragedy of the transactional model is the emotional and operational toll it takes on the owner during the 10 years before they try to sell.
The burnout is real.
It really is. He shares his own deeply personal story about his previous company, Warlow & Co.
Yeah, his research and consulting firm.
Right. It was a boutique firm. And he describes being trapped in this brutal cycle. He calls it the tyranny of selling and doing.
The tyranny of selling and doing. That phrase haunts so many founders.
Oh, I'm sure it triggers some PTSD for listeners.
It is the structural flaw inherent in almost every service-based business, whether you are a law firm, a marketing agency, or a custom software dev shop.
It's a pendulum that you can never stop swinging.
Exactly. First, you hustle to sell a custom project. Writing the proposal takes 20 hours. Pitching it takes 10. You finally win the contract.
Celebrate for 5 minutes.
Right. But because it's a custom project, you, the principal, have to actually execute the work. So you pull yourself out of the market and focus entirely on delivery for 3 months.
And what happens while you're delivering?
While you are heads down doing the work, your sales pipeline completely dries up.
Because no one is selling.
Exactly. You finish the project, you deliver to the client, you get your final check, and you wake up the next morning to realize you have absolutely no new clients.
The dreaded zero again.
So you frantically start the hunting process all over again. The utilization rate of your resources is constantly spiking and crashing.
He paints this incredibly visceral picture of the anxiety this creates. He recalls the exact moment his company's fixed monthly expenses, payroll, rent, software licenses, crossed the $100,000 mark.
$100,000 a month just to break even.
Just to exist. He describes waking up on the first day of the month, looking at a dashboard that has reset to zero, and realizing, if we don't go out and successfully hunt and close new business this month, we still have to find $100,000 in cash just to cover our baseline overhead.
The pure cortisol spiking stress of that scenario is debilitating.
It forces business owners to make short-term, desperate decisions just to make payroll.
Right, rather than making strategic decisions to actually grow the company.
Which is exactly why he fundamentally restructured his entire business model.
He had to.
He recognized that doing custom, one-off research proposals where every single client required a bespoke solution was completely unscalable.
So what did he do?
He pivoted to a standardized offering. He stopped selling custom projects and started selling syndicated research.
Ah, so a subscription.
Yes. He created a subscription model where clients didn't pay for his time. They paid for access to a continuously updated stream of specialized industry data.
That's a huge shift.
And crucially, instead of billing them 60 days in arrears after a project was finished, he charged them an annual subscription fee up front.
And that structural shift completely changed the trajectory of his company.
Oh, massively. He started attracting enterprise giants. Apple, IBM, Google, American Express, they all became subscribers.
Yeah, big fish.
The business began growing at a compounded rate of 25% a year. But more importantly, because these enterprise clients were paying upfront for an annual subscription, his working capital issues just vanished.
Because he had the cash before he did the work.
Exactly. He had negative working capital, meaning he had the cash in the bank to fund his operations before he even had to deliver the service.
That is the dream.
The company was ultimately acquired by a publicly traded entity in 2008. I like to think of it as the difference between running on a treadmill and riding an escalator.
I love that analogy.
Right. On a treadmill, the second you stop moving your legs, you stop making progress. You have to expend a massive amount of kinetic energy just to stay in the exact same place.
It's exhausting.
But a subscription model is an escalator. You build the machinery once, you step on, and the momentum of the stairs carries you upward. Even when you are resting, the business is compounding.
That escalator analogy bridges us directly from financial valuation into the day-to-day mechanics of operational sanity.
Yes, the operations. Let's dig into that.
Because beyond the multiple you get when you sell, there is a hidden structural nightmare in traditional business models that destroys gross margins.
What's that?
It is the absolute impossibility of accurately guessing demand.
Guessing demand. Okay, because the valuation multiplier is fantastic for the day you exit.
Sure.
But what about the 10 years you spend in the trenches before you sell? You still have to survive the day-to-day logistics. And guessing demand is where so many businesses just bleed cash.
Let's look at the concept of perishable inventory, because
Mhm.
it illustrates the supply chain bullwhip effect perfectly.
The florist example, right?
Yes, Warlow uses the floral industry as the baseline. A traditional brick-and-mortar flower shop operates entirely on speculation.
Total guesswork.
The owner has to go to a wholesale market or buy from a distributor and guess how many people are going to spontaneously walk into their shop and buy roses that specific week.
They're essentially making a high-stakes bet on human behavior.
Exactly. And because they are guessing, the metrics are horrifying.
Hmm.
Traditional florists routinely throw out between 30% to 50% of their inventory every single month.
Wait, half their inventory just in the trash.
Right, in the dumpster, yeah. Up to half of the product they paid for literally rots in a refrigerator and gets tossed.
Their gross margins are decimated by spoilage before they even make a single sale.
Now, run the logistics of a competitor operating on a subscription model. Look at H-Bloom.
H-Bloom, they do subscriptions.
Right, they sell floral arrangements on a recurring basis to offices, hotels, and high-end residential clients. H-Bloom does not operate on speculation. They operate on determinism.
Because they have subscribers.
Because they have a subscriber base, they know exactly how many arrangements they need to deliver next Tuesday.
Down to the stem.
Exactly. Because they know exactly what their demand is, they can buy from the wholesale market strictly to order. They bypass the guessing game entirely.
And what's the result of that determinism?
Their spoilage rate isn't 50%. It isn't even 10%. Their spoilage rate is an astonishing 2%.
2%. That 48% difference in spoilage isn't just a slight efficiency gain, it is a structural advantage that allows them to outspend traditional florists on customer acquisition.
Or offer better pricing.
Or simply pocket significantly higher net margins. They have engineered waste completely out of their supply chain.
It's beautiful logistics.
But, the concept of perishable inventory extends way beyond physical goods rotting in a fridge.
Oh, absolutely.
There's another massive operational pain point that subscriptions solve, and that's the slow bleed of accounts receivable.
Unpaid invoices. The bane of B2B.
The absolute worst. This B2B example of Stuart Hunt and Associates from the deep dive is just a masterclass in fixing a broken cash conversion cycle.
Stuart Hunt and Associates is such a fascinating logistical case study. They operate in a highly regulated niche.
Radioactive waste, right?
Yes, the safe disposal of radioactive waste and the testing of small radioactive devices. To give you context, think about the security wand that an airport TSA agent waves over your luggage.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Inside that wand is a tiny radioactive isotope. By federal law, that device has to be professionally tested every single year to ensure the seal hasn't degraded and it isn't leaking radiation.
Oh, wow. So it's mandatory.
It's a mandatory compliance issue for the client. They have to do it.
So Stuart Hunt and Associates is performing thousands of these microtests every year. But their operational workflow was completely broken.
How so?
They were operating on a traditional B2B service model. They would receive the device, perform the test, log the compliance data, and then their accounting department would generate an invoice for roughly $100 and mail it to the client.
And then the waiting game begins.
The terrible waiting game. Because it was a low priority, $100 compliance invoice sitting on the desk of some corporate accounts payable clerk.
It gets buried.
It gets completely ignored. Stuart Hunt was routinely waiting 120 days, 4 full months, to get paid for work they had already completed.
We really have to break down the actual cost of that delay. When you have days sales outstanding DSO of 120 days, you are essentially acting as an interest-free bank for your clients.
Which is crazy for a small business.
It is. But worse than the cost of capital is the administrative overhead. Stuart Hunt had to employ 2 full-time bookkeepers whose sole job was to pick up the phone, chase down these facility managers, and beg for $100 checks.
The administrative cost to collect the invoice was probably approaching the profit margin of the test itself.
Rapidly approaching it. And inevitably, they were constantly writing off bad debt from companies that went bankrupt or just refused to pay. The friction of the transaction was strangling the business.
But then they realized something fundamental about their service. This wasn't a discretionary purchase.
Right, it was legally mandated.
Every single customer legally required this test to be done annually. It was a recurring need mandated by law. So they completely flipped the script.
They pivoted.
They stopped billing in arrears. They introduced a subscription model. To use their service, a client now had to provide a credit card up front and agree to an annual subscription fee that was billed before the devices were ever tested.
It is an elegant reversal of the cash flow cycle.
Completely flipped it.
Instead of laying out the capital to pay their technicians, doing the work, generating the paperwork, and begging for money for a third of the year.
They secure the cash up front.
Exactly. The money sits in their bank account, earning interest or funding operations before a single hour of labor is expended.
And what happened to the two bookkeepers?
The administrative bloat of those two collection bookkeepers vanished entirely. They eradicated bad debt overnight.
And here is the insight that really elevated this concept for me. If you are listening to this right now, and you run a service business, maybe you manage a PR firm, or you do freelance coding, or you run an architectural firm, you don't have physical flowers rotting in a fridge.
No, you don't.
But you do have perishable inventory. Your perishable inventory is human time.
That is the most brutal reality of the service sector. If you have 3 graphic designers sitting at their desks on a Thursday afternoon with no active client work to execute,
Those hours have spoiled.
that time has rotted just as surely as a dead rose. You can never get it back, you can never sell it again, but you still have to cover the payroll, the taxes, and the overhead for those hours.
It's agonizing.
Conversely, if you misjudge demand in the other direction and you have twice as much work as you have staff, your team burns out. The quality of your deliverables plummets, and you hemorrhage your best clients.
Subscriptions solve the perishable time problem. When you operate on recurring revenue, you know within a margin of 1 or 2% exactly how much revenue is coming in next month.
And exactly how much utilization is required to fulfill those contracts.
Exactly. You can staff your team perfectly. You eliminate the bench time, you eliminate the burnout, and you drastically lower the ambient stress of the organization.
You match supply perfectly with demand.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, executing this pivot requires overcoming a massive hurdle.
Oh, it's not easy.
Asking a consumer or a B2B client to commit to paying you up front, month after month, requires an extreme level of behavioral commitment.
Especially today.
Right. In a marketplace where everyone is aggressively trained to hunt for the cheapest possible deal, how do you actually convince them to stop looking at your competitors and lock themselves into a recurring charge?
That is the pivotal barrier to entry, and it really takes us into the mechanics of creating truly sticky customers. We have to analyze the baseline behavior of a consumer in a transactional model.
Okay, let's look at it.
In a standard retail environment, customers are inherently promiscuous. They have zero structural loyalty.
Promiscuous is the perfect word for it, because loyalty in retail is an illusion. It's based purely on convenience and price at a specific moment in time.
Exactly.
Warlow uses the example of a 100-pound Pyrenean mountain dog to illustrate this.
That's a huge dog.
A massive dog.
Mm.
And if you own a massive dog, the sheer volume of food it consumes dictates your buying behavior.
You're buying a lot of kibble.
If you are buying kibble at a big box pet store or a grocery store, you are a highly promiscuous buyer. You're scanning the Sunday flyers, you are clipping coupons, you are checking end caps.
Always looking for the deal.
Always. If Purina is $5 cheaper than A&M's this week, or if there's a buy one get one free promotion, you switch brands instantly.
No hesitation.
Your loyalty is entirely tethered to the lowest price point available on the specific day you run out of food. You are constantly renegotiating the transaction.
But look at the behavioral shift when that same consumer signs up for a dog food subscription.
Like through Chewy or Amazon.
Right, whether it's Amazon, Chewy, or a specialized D2C brand. The friction of the purchase is eliminated. The 40-pound bag of food simply arrives on their porch every 3 weeks.
Like magic.
The moment that subscription is activated, the consumer's behavior fundamentally changes. They never look at a competitor's pricing again.
They just stop looking.
They stop entirely. They don't check the flyers. They don't know if a rival brand is running a 20% off sale because they aren't looking.
The mental bandwidth has been freed up.
The mental bandwidth required to solve the problem of feeding the dog has been permanently offloaded. You have moved them from a promiscuous state to a locked-in state.
However, getting them to cross that threshold in the current economy is incredibly difficult.
Very hard.
We are dealing with severe subscription fatigue. Consumers are hyper-aware of their monthly recurring charges. They are tired of being nickeled and dimed for every app, every newsletter, and every minor service.
They check their credit card statements now.
They do. You cannot simply offer a 5% discount or a minor logistical convenience and expect someone to hand over their credit card for perpetuity.
It won't work anymore.
This is where Warlow introduces the 10x versus 10% rule, which is the absolute core of subscription pricing strategy.
Consumers are highly rational actors when evaluating subscriptions. They know that by giving you a recurring mandate on their credit card, they are giving up their optionality.
They are surrendering their freedom to shop around.
Exactly. To convince them to surrender that optionality, your offer must provide what Warlow calls a ridiculous amount of value.
A ridiculous amount. I like that.
You cannot lure a subscriber by being 10% cheaper or 10% faster. Your recurring value proposition must be 10 times better than the one-off alternative.
10 times better. 10x.
The delta in value has to be so massive that rejecting the subscription feels economically foolish to the consumer.
The new Masters Academy example demonstrates this math beautifully.
The art school.
Right, they operate in the online education space, specifically providing video tutorials for fine artists. Let's look at the traditional one-off alternative.
Okay.
If you are an artist and you want to take a single in-person weekend workshop with a master instructor, say, learning figure drawing or oil painting, you are going to pay between $600 and $800 for a few days of instruction, plus travel costs.
That's a high-friction, high-cost transaction.
Very high friction. New Masters Academy looked at that baseline and engineered a 10x value proposition.
What do they offer?
For a subscription fee of just $29 a month, they give you unrestricted access to over 350 hours of high-definition video tutorials from those exact same master instructors.
The psychological impact of that pricing is undeniable. A consumer looks at a $600 one-off class versus a $29 monthly subscription that provides vastly more content.
That's a no-brainer.
It isn't just a slight savings. It is an asymmetrical return on investment. You are getting access to a lifetime of instruction for a fraction of the cost of a single physical class.
The sheer volume of value overwhelms the consumer's subscription fatigue.
We see the same asymmetrical value in the physical product space with Groovebook.
Oh, Groovebook. This is a great example.
Think about the friction of the traditional alternative. If you want to print 100 photos from your camera roll, you have to go to a local pharmacy, stand at a clunky, slow touchscreen kiosk for 45 minutes.
Dealing with those terrible interfaces.
Sorry, upload everything and pay roughly 30 cents a print. It costs you $30 in an hour of your time.
Terrible experience.
Groovebook engineered a subscription model where, for a flat fee of $2.99 a month, you simply select 100 photos on their app, tap a button, and they mail you a beautifully bound, perforated book of glossy prints.
$2.99.
The alternative is $30 and high friction. The subscription is $2.99 and zero friction. It is literally a 10x cost reduction paired with a 10x convenience multiplier.
And that extreme value proposition is the engine for hypergrowth. Groovebook scaled to 95,000 active, paying subscribers in a single year on the back of that math.
95,000.
WhatsApp, going back to our opening hook, added 1 million users a day.
1 million a day.
Why? Because paying $1 a year to send unlimited international messages, photos, and voice notes over a data connection was exponentially easily more than 10 times more valuable than paying 25 cents per SMS to a legacy telecom provider every time you wanted to text a relative in another country.
The value was undeniable.
Okay, but this is where we really need to dig into the actual financial engineering. Because as a business owner, this sounds terrifying.
Giving away the farm.
Right. If I am instructing my listeners to give their customers 10 times the value, or to slash their prices to 1/10 of what the market traditionally bears, aren't they just nuking their own gross margins?
How do you survive that?
Exactly. How do you offer a 10x value proposition without fundamentally bankrupting the company? I mean, Groovebook was charging $2.99 to print and ship 100 photos. The postage alone should bankrupt them.
It's the most intuitive fear, but it demonstrates a misunderstanding of how unit economics shift in a recurring model.
Walk me through the shift.
When you transition to a subscription, several massive line items on your P&L either shrink dramatically or disappear entirely.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, let's look at operational optimization. Because Groovebook had absolute predictability regarding their volume. They knew exactly how many books they had to produce each month. They could invest in custom engineering.
They could plan.
Exactly. They invented and patented a specific binding process that made the photo book flexible enough and thin enough to legally qualify as standard automated mail.
Ah, bypassing package rates.
That engineering reduced their shipping cost to just 78 cents per book. They couldn't have justified that R&D investment without predictable volume.
So the predictability funds the efficiency. That's huge. But the bigger margin saver has to be the customer acquisition cost, right? the CAC.
Exactly. In a transactional model, you have to pay to acquire the customer over and over again.
Every single time.
If you run an e-commerce store, you might spend $15 on meta ads to get someone to buy a $40 shirt. If you want them to buy another shirt next month, you have to spend more marketing dollars to retarget them.
Your CAC just eats your margin on every single transaction.
But in a subscription model, your cost of reacquisition drops to absolute zero.
Zero.
You pay to acquire the customer once, and then they generate revenue automatically for months or years. Your lifetime value LTV to CAC ratio expands massively.
That explains the WhatsApp anomaly perfectly. They reached 415 million active users without employing a single marketing executive.
Not one.
They spent $0 on marketing. The sheer volume of predictable recurring revenue, combined with the complete elimination of marketing spend and the operational efficiencies of scale, more than compensated for the fact that they were only charging $1 a year.
You are essentially trading a high-margin, high-stress, unpredictable sale for a lower-margin, zero-stress, guaranteed volume of sales.
Which brings us to the real operational takeaway for anyone designing an offer right now. Do not try to lure subscribers with a pathetic 10% discount on your checkout page.
It won't work.
It is insulting to the consumer's intelligence, and it won't overcome their inertia. You have to take a forensic look at your value delivery. Restructure your offer.
Bundle things up.
Bundle your services, leverage digital scale, or optimize your supply chain until subscribing to your business makes engaging with your competitor look mathematically irrational.
And once you establish that recurring relationship, the business model reveals its final and arguably most lucrative advantage.
The Trojan horse of market research.
And the architecture of the upsell. Because a subscription is not just a mechanism for product delivery. It is an ongoing, intimate, data-rich dialogue with your most engaged buyers.
The informational asymmetry of a subscription model is just staggering to me. Look at how traditional enterprise companies operate.
They guess.
They spend tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions, hiring external consulting firms, running focus groups, and conducting A/B testing just to desperately guess what feature or product their customers might want to buy next year.
It is a massive capital expenditure with highly variable accuracy.
But in a subscription business, the dynamic is completely inverted. Your customers are effectively paying you a monthly fee to conduct market research on them.
The B2B example of contractorselling.com is the perfect illustration of this inverted dynamic.
Let's talk about Joe Crisara.
Yeah, Joe Crisara runs this platform where plumbers, electricians, HVAC technicians, and general contractors pay $89 a month for access to business advice, sales training, and industry best practices.
Now, $89 a month across a solid user base is great recurring revenue.
It's fantastic, but the real genius, the actual engine of the business, isn't the subscription fee.
It's the community forums hidden behind the paywall.
Exactly. By actively monitoring those discussions, seeing exactly what questions these contractors are asking daily, and analyzing which specific topics generate the most debate and engagement, Crisara is receiving real-time, highly granular market research.
He possesses a perfect feedback loop.
Flawless.
If he sees 36 HVAC owners struggling with how to price commercial maintenance contracts, he doesn't have to guess if a course on commercial pricing will sell.
He knows it will.
He knows the exact pain point, he knows the language his market uses to describe it, and he knows exactly who to sell it to.
This allows him to develop highly targeted, high-margin ancillary products like live intensive workshops, specialized coaching, or advanced software templates. The subscription acts as a self-funding lead generation tool for his high-ticket items.
We see this exact same architecture in the physical consumer product space, specifically with sample boxes.
Birchbox is the pioneer here.
Right. They charge a nominal fee, around $10 a month, to send subscribers a curated box filled with small, sample-sized versions of high-end cosmetics, perfumes, and skincare products.
And the consumers love the element of surprise and discovery.
But Birchbox is not fundamentally a sampling company. The $10 a month simply covers their logistics and keeps the customer engaged.
It pays for the shipping.
Exactly. The real revenue engine, the high-margin profit center, engages when a subscriber tries a tiny vial of a $90 face cream, falls in love with it, and then logs on to Birchbox's e-commerce store to buy the full-size version.
The psychology at play here is the reduction of friction. The subscription establishes a baseline relationship and, crucially, establishes trust.
It's a foot in the door.
Once that trust is established and once you have their payment information vaulted and their shipping address verified, the friction required to execute a secondary one-off transaction is practically non-existent.
We saw this with H. Bloom, too, the floral company.
Well, right, they do this well.
They have their steady, predictable subscription revenue from offices and hotels. But they discovered that for every $10 a subscriber pays them in recurring monthly revenue, that same subscriber will reliably spend an additional $3 in one-shot, high-margin orders for special occasions.
It makes perfect sense when you map the consumer's decision tree.
How so?
If I am the office manager and I am already receiving a stunning, flawless floral arrangement from H. Bloom in our lobby every Tuesday morning,
And you suddenly realize you need to order a massive bouquet for your CEO's wife for her birthday.
exactly, what am I going to do? I'm not going to open Google and search for a random florist I've never vetted. I am not going to risk a botched delivery on something that important.
No way.
I'm simply going to call the company that has reliably delivered perfection to me 52 weeks a year,
Right.
the company that already has my corporate card on file, and I'm going to give them the high-margin one-off order.
The subscription creates an ecosystem of default trust.
You are building an enclosed ecosystem. When a customer is comfortable inside that ecosystem, their natural inclination is to consolidate their spending with you.
You become the default.
You aren't just selling a product. You are becoming the infrastructure for that specific area of their life or business. And once you become infrastructure, price sensitivity plummets and lifetime value skyrockets.
Which brings us to the synthesis of everything we've unpacked today. If we pull all these mechanical, psychological, and financial levers together, what is the ultimate reality of the subscription economy?
It's a total paradigm shift.
We started by deconstructing how heavyweights like Amazon use the Trojan horse of a recurring fee to bypass traditional consumer choice, shifting us from promiscuous bargain hunters to fiercely loyal subscribers whose primary goal is simply justifying their sunk cost.
We then explored the financial reality of the valuation multiplier. We saw how moving away from the tyranny of selling and doing doesn't just lower an owner's blood pressure.
It definitely does that.
It fundamentally increases the EBITDA multiple an acquirer will pay, because the market severely discounts the risk of hustle and pays a massive premium for the predictability of future cash flows.
From there, we looked at the day-to-day operational sanity this model provides. By eliminating the guessing game of demand, you eradicate perishable inventory, whether that is rotting wholesale flowers or the unbillable hours of an expensive technical team.
The human perishable inventory.
We looked at how B2B companies can reverse the cash conversion cycle, killing the nightmare of accounts receivable by mandating upfront payments.
We analyzed the barrier to entry, recognizing that to combat subscription fatigue, you must deploy the 10x versus 10% rule.
You have to give ridiculous value.
You cannot win with marginal improvements. You must engineer an asymmetrical value proposition that relies on zero marketing spend and operational scale to protect your margins.
And finally, we dismantled the architecture of the upsell, seeing how a subscription is ultimately a self-funding market research engine that lowers the friction for high-margin secondary transactions.
The soul of this entire deep dive, the core realization you have to take away from Warlow's research, is that a subscriber is an entirely different entity than a customer.
A completely different species.
A customer is a transient event. You have to hunt them, capture them, and the moment the transaction clears, they escape back into the wild.
But a subscriber?
A subscriber is an appreciating asset. You are farming. Whether you are shipping diapers, securely disposing of B2B radioactive waste, teaching online oil painting, or running a local cafe, transitioning your revenue model from transactional hunting to recurring farming transforms your business.
It takes it from a high-stress, exhausting treadmill into a highly valued, automated engine of compounding growth.
It alters the DNA of the enterprise, it changes your daily stress levels, it stabilizes your operational logistics, and it exponentially increases your terminal valuation.
But it's not easy.
No, the transition requires actively dismantling the very structures that probably made you successful in the first place. It requires a radical reimagining of how you deliver value.
And on that note, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Something to deeply analyze regarding your own career trajectory, the agency you run, or the product you are building right now.
A stress test.
A major stress test. Think about your absolute core product or service, the thing you do best. Now imagine if a massive tech giant, an Amazon, an Apple, or a Google, decided tomorrow to offer your exact product as a cheap or even free bundled add-on to one of their existing massive subscriptions.
That is a terrifying thought experiment.
What would happen to your P&L? Would your customers stay loyal to you out of an appreciation for your brand history? Or would they immediately abandon you because the friction of the tech giant's ecosystem was just too convenient to ignore?
It is a brutal stress test for your business model. If your entire retention strategy relies on the hope that a consumer won't find a cheaper, easier alternative, you do not have a moat.
You are wide open.
You are incredibly vulnerable to anyone who figures out how to bundle your service into an automated habit. You have to build your own psychological and logistical moat before someone else commoditizes you.
The threat is existential, but the opportunity for those who pivot is generational. Now that we've spent this time breaking down exactly why you need automatic customers to survive, our next deep dive is going to be intensely tactical.
We are getting into the weeds.
We're going to break down the how. We will be exploring the 9 specific subscription models that Warlow has identified in his research frameworks that can be adapted to literally any industry, from complex B2B software companies to your neighborhood landscaping service.
It will be a highly practical session, moving from the theory evaluation into the exact blueprints of implementation.
It's the execution phase, and you won't want to miss it. Until then, take a hard, honest look at your P&L. Find the friction in your customer journey, locate the perishable inventory in your operations, and start thinking critically about how to get off the treadmill and onto the escalator. See you next time.
Imagine waking up, right? It's the very first day of the month.
Always a stressful day.
Oh, completely. You pour your coffee, you sit down at your desk, you pull up your business dashboard, and you just see absolute zero.
Right. The dials have totally reset.
Exactly. You could have had this, record-breaking, champagne-popping month just 30 days ago. I mean, you could have worked 80-hour weeks and just exhausted your entire team.
But it doesn't matter. The slate is wiped clean.
It's totally clean. You're back at the starting line, and you're staring down this mountain of fixed costs, like rent, payroll, software licenses, insurance.
And you have to start the grind all over again just to survive.
Right. You have to go hunt down new people, convince them to listen to your pitch, close the deal, and then somehow scramble to actually deliver the work.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. But okay, take a deep breath. Now, I want you to imagine a totally different reality.
Okay, I'm with you.
You wake up on that exact same first of the month. You open that exact same dashboard. But this time, you see that 100% of your monthly operating expenses are already covered.
Wow. Just already in the bank.
Exactly. The cash is already committed by customers who buy from you automatically, month after month, year after year.
That contrast right there, I mean, that highlights the fundamental difference between actually running a business and simply, renting your customers one stressful transaction at a time.
Renting your customers. I love that phrasing.
Because the first scenario, that's just a recipe for chronic anxiety, right? But the second scenario, that creates this amazing foundation for strategic freedom. It completely changes the psychology of the person sitting in the owner's chair.
And that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking the core mechanics of John Warrillow's framework from his book, The Automatic Customer.
Specifically, we're looking at the undeniable business case for shifting from that traditional, one-shot transactional mindset to an automatic subscription model.
Right, because you're going to learn exactly how to exponentially increase the lifetime value of a customer. We're going to look at how to smooth out your daily operations and ultimately how to build a highly valuable asset.
Which is really what every business owner wants, right?
Yeah.
But to understand the power of this shift, we kind of have to look closely at the structural flaws of the traditional service model first.
Yeah, what Warlow calls the tyranny of selling and doing. And the crazy part is, this is a trap he actually built for himself.
He really did, back in the late 90s, I think. Warlow was running this research firm called Warlow & Co.
Right, it was a classic agency model. A prospect comes in with a problem, you listen to them, and then you spend days or even weeks crafting this highly customized proposal to solve it.
Which, if you think about it, is just a terribly flawed way to allocate resources.
Oh, completely.
I mean, developing custom proposals is incredibly expensive when you look at human capital. And your conversion rate, it's never 100%.
Never. You're sinking all this uncompensated time into pitches that just go nowhere. And Warlow found himself in this spot where, the company was profitable on paper, but operationally, it was an absolute nightmare.
Right. He hit this point where his baseline operating expenses, the money just automatically leaving his bank account every month hit $100,000.
100 grand a month. Just to keep the lights on, that's that zero dashboard panic we talked about. If the sales engine stalls for even a couple of weeks, you are personally on the hook for a massive shortfall.
Yeah, and the friction of that sell and do loop is that it basically operates like a seesaw.
How do you mean?
Well, you spend all your energy selling.
Mhm.
Right. You land a huge project, and then suddenly everyone pivots to actually doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
But because everyone is busy executing, the sales pipeline just completely dries up.
Ah, right. So the project ends, the revenue stops, and you look up and realize you have an empty pipeline.
Exactly. So you have to frantically start selling all over again.
Oh.
The volatility is just exhausting.
So what did Warlow do? Because he obviously didn't stay stuck in that loop.
No, he realized the bespoke model was just totally unsustainable for his sanity. So he started studying research firms that had actually scaled without that seesaw effect. Companies like Gartner and Forrester Research.
Oh, sure. The big players.
Right. And he noticed they achieved stability by productizing their intellectual property. Instead of starting from scratch with a blank page for every single client, they gathered highly valuable standardized data.
And then they just sold identical access to that data to a broad base of subscribers.
Exactly. So Warlow pivoted his own firm using that exact blueprint. He killed the custom proposals. He replaced them with a standard menu of offerings.
That must have been terrifying at first.
I'm sure it was. But more importantly, he stopped invoicing after a project was done and started charging an upfront annual subscription fee.
And let me guess, the operational transformation was immediate.
It really was. Because when you start the month with the revenue already locked in, you aren't managing crisis to crisis anymore. You're managing for growth.
Right, you can actually plan.
Yeah. His firm started growing at 25% a year. They landed massive Fortune 500 accounts. And eventually, they built enough intrinsic value to be acquired by a public company.
That's an incredible pivot.
Mm-hmm.
But, if we're looking for the absolute purest, most extreme distillation of the automatic customer, we have to talk about WhatsApp.
Oh, absolutely. The WhatsApp story is just wild.
Right. Everyone knows the headline number. Facebook bought them in early 2014 for $19 billion.
19 billion. With a B.
With a B. But the underlying architecture that actually justified that valuation, I feel like it's super misunderstood.
Totally misunderstood. To really appreciate what Yan Koum and Brian Acton did, you have to look at how internet startups normally operated back then.
Right, the standard playbook.
Yeah, the prevailing wisdom was you build a messaging platform, you give it away for free to get as many users as fast as possible, and then...
You bombard them with ads.
Exactly. You monetize them with highly targeted advertising.
But building an ad-supported network is fundamentally a different business than building a pure communication tool, isn't it?
Fundamentally different. Because if you want to sell ads, you have to collect massive amounts of user data. And to parse that data, you need complex algorithms.
And you need a massive enterprise sales force to actually sell the ad space.
Right. You need account managers for the ad agencies. You need legal teams for privacy compliance, creative teams for the ad units. The overhead is just staggering.
So Koum and Acton, they just rejected that entire infrastructure.
Completely rejected it.
Yeah.
They were notoriously anti-advertising. They wanted a totally frictionless, private communication experience. So they made a structural decision that went against the entire industry.
A subscription model.
Yep. They gave the app away for free for the first year, and after that, it cost exactly $1 per year.
$1 single dollar. I mean, $1 every 12 months sounds like just an abysmal business strategy when you compare it to companies landing, six-figure enterprise contracts. How does $1 lead to a $19 billion valuation?
It comes down to this crazy collision of massive scale and ruthless operational efficiency. At the time of the acquisition, WhatsApp had 450 million active users.
450 million, wow.
And they were accelerating. They were adding roughly 1 million new users every single day.
Okay, so the revenue math on $1 a year at that volume is obviously huge, but there's another metric here that's even crazier, right?
Yeah, their head count. When Facebook wrote that $19 billion check, WhatsApp had exactly 55 employees.
That is just, I can't even wrap my head around that. 55 people supporting almost 500 million users.
It completely defies traditional business logic.
It does. How is that even possible?
Well, because they didn't sell ads, they had 0 ad salespeople, 0 account executives, 0 data brokers.
Ah, so they didn't need the bloated infrastructure?
Exactly. The vast majority of those 55 people were just pure engineers. Their only job was to keep the messaging protocol fast, reliable, and clean.
So the subscription model let them strip away all that friction of monetization and just focus on the core product.
Right. They created a utility that was so reliable and so cheap that paying $1 a year was basically a non-issue for the user. But the collective revenue required almost zero ongoing sales effort from the company.
The customers became perfectly automatic.
Perfectly automatic. And that actually serves as a great bridge to the most critical concept in this whole framework. We've talked about how subscriptions reduce stress, but we really need to talk about how it fundamentally alters the financial architecture of a company.
Right. This is about increasing the value of your largest asset. Because for most entrepreneurs, their business is the single largest line item on their personal balance sheet.
By far. It usually dwarfs their real estate, their retirement accounts, all of it.
But there is this huge disconnect, isn't there, between how an operator views the value of their business and how a financial buyer views it.
Oh, a massive cognitive dissonance. Operators tend to look at their business like a historical artifact.
They look backward.
Exactly. They want to be paid for all those late nights, the industry awards they won 3 years ago, the record profits from last quarter.
But the buyer doesn't care about any of that, do they?
Not at all. A financial buyer is purchasing a mechanism for future returns. They're buying a future stream of profits.
So it's like, think of it like buying an apple orchard.
I love this analogy. Go ahead.
If I'm negotiating to buy your orchard, I am definitely not going to pay you for the apples you harvested last October. You already sold those. The cash is in your pocket.
Right.
My valuation of your orchard is based entirely on my confidence in how many apples those trees are guaranteed to grow for me next fall and the fall after that.
That is perfectly put. And it illustrates this concept of risk adjustment. In the financial world, they formalize this through a calculation called discounted cash flow.
Okay, let's break that down, but without the MBA jargon.
Keep it simple, right? The basic principle is just that $1 generated next year is worth less than $1 sitting in your hand today.
Because the future is uncertain.
Exactly. The buyer has to discount the value of your future revenue based on the risk that it might not actually happen.
So if I run a traditional transaction-based consulting firm, every single dollar of my projected revenue for next year is essentially a gamble.
Totally. I mean, you might have a great reputation, but you still have to go out, find the clients, win the bids, do the work.
And if the economy dips or a new competitor shows up, my projected revenue could just evaporate.
Which means your revenue is highly risky. So a buyer is going to apply a heavy discount to your valuation.
But a subscription business flips that entirely.
Exactly. Because if you have a documented history of retaining customers, your future revenue isn't a gamble anymore. It becomes a statistical probability.
The buyer can look at your metrics and know with high certainty that a specific percentage of your current revenue is just going to automatically renew next year.
Right. The risk is drastically lower, so the discount applied is much smaller. They will pay a massive premium for the certainty of tomorrow's dollar.
And this disparity in risk creates what Warlow calls the multiplier gap.
The multiplier gap. Yeah. Let's look at the baseline for a traditional business. If you have a solid traditional service company doing, let's say, over $3 million in top-line revenue,
Okay.
the market usually values that company at roughly 4.5 times its pre-tax profit. So if you're doing $5 million in revenue with a 10% profit margin, you have $500,000 in profit.
And you apply that standard multiple, so your life's work is worth about $2.25 million.
Right. Which is a very respectable exit. But it absolutely pales in comparison to the multiples in the recurring revenue space.
Give me an example.
Look at the security and alarm monitoring industry. They have a stark side-by-side comparison built right in. A security company generates revenue in 2 ways.
Okay, what's the first way?
First is the one-shot transaction. A crew comes to your house, drills the holes, runs the wires, installs all the cameras.
Right. And the second way is the automatic customer. You pay a monthly fee for them to monitor those sensors and call the police if the alarm goes off.
Exactly. Now, when financial buyers acquire these security firms, they literally parse out those 2 revenue streams and value them completely differently.
Really? How much differently?
They'll typically pay around 75 cents on the dollar for the historical installation revenue, because that's a one-time event. You have to find a new homeowner to repeat it.
Wow, 75 cents.
But for the recurring monthly monitoring revenue, they will pay $2 or more for every dollar of that revenue.
That's insane. So it's the exact same company doing the exact same total volume of sales, but it's far more valuable if a higher percentage comes from the monitoring contracts instead of the hardware installs.
Precisely. And while a 2-to-1 advantage is huge, The math gets truly exponential when you look at the software sector.
Oh yeah, software valuations are in a league of their own. The framework brings in data from Zane Terrence, right? The investment banker.
Yeah, Zane Terrence. He specializes in subscription software, and he categorizes valuation multiples into three distinct tiers, or buckets. It really shows how buyers penalize risk and reward extreme predictability.
Let's walk through those buckets because it shows exactly how fortunes are built here.
Okay, bucket one. This is the entry-level tier for smaller software companies doing less than $5 million in annual recurring revenue. They have moderate growth, and their cancellation rates, what they call churn, are around 2 to 4% a month.
Okay, so even in this lowest tier, the valuations are totally divorced from traditional profit multiples, right?
Completely. A bucket one company is valued at 24 to 48 times its monthly recurring revenue.
Wait, monthly recurring revenue, not profit.
Exactly, which translates to roughly 2 to 4 times its total annual revenue. The market is placing a multiple on the top-line gross revenue itself.
That is incredible. But then it gets crazier. Bucket two.
Bucket two. These are companies scaled past $5 million in annual recurring revenue. They're growing at 25 to 50% a year. But crucially, they've engineered their product to be so sticky that their net churn drops below 1.5% per month.
And what does that do to the valuation?
It jumps to 48 to 72 times monthly recurring revenue, or 4 to 6 times annual revenue.
Just by dropping the churn rate a couple of percentage points.
Exactly. But the apex is bucket three. These are the unicorns.
The hyper-growth companies.
Right. Scaling at over 50% annually. But their defining characteristic is a net churn rate of less than 1% per month.
Less than 1%.
Yeah. The market values these rare assets at 72 to 96 times their monthly recurring revenue, meaning they routinely sell for up to 8 times their annual recurring revenue.
8 times top line. So the natural question here is, why does dropping your churn rate from 3% down to less than 1% essentially double the valuation multiplier of the entire company?
It's all about the physics of the leaky bucket.
The leaky bucket, right.
If you have a bucket that's leaking water, you have to constantly pour new water in just to keep the level flat. So if you have a 3% monthly churn rate, you are losing roughly a third of your entire customer base every single year.
A third? That's brutal. So your sales team has to work frantically just to replace the people who walked out the back door.
Exactly. You are spending massive amounts of capital just to tread water. But if you can push that churn rate below 1%, the leak is basically sealed.
So every new customer your sales team brings in is pure compounding growth.
Pure growth. You aren't wasting marketing capital replacing lost accounts. You're building a taller skyscraper. Buyers will pay astronomical premiums for a sealed bucket because the compounding growth is mathematically inevitable.
Like Ancestry.com.
Perfect example. They had $40.5 million in highly predictable monthly recurring revenue, and they sold for $1.6 billion.
Which is a multiple of 39 times their monthly top line.
Exactly.
Now, I can hear a listener right now thinking, okay, Ancestry.com, enterprise software, that's great for tech, but I run a physical business. I have trucks, I have inventory, I have blue-collar labor. This multiplier magic doesn't apply to the real world.
I hear that pushback all the time. It is the most persistent myth about the automatic customer. And Warlow completely shatters it by looking at one of the least glamorous industries you can think of.
Backyard pest control?
Yes. Specifically, the Mosquito Squad franchise.
Okay, tell us about Mosquito Squad, because this is fascinating.
So they operate out of Richmond, Virginia. Their core service is sending a technician in a truck to spray affluent homeowners' properties for mosquitoes and ticks.
Which, in a traditional model, is an incredibly friction-heavy transaction.
Huge friction. The homeowner sees a bug, they call around for quotes, they schedule an appointment, the tech comes out, they leave an invoice, and the company waits for a check in the mail.
And the next time the bugs come back, the homeowner might just call someone else who left a flyer on their door.
Exactly. It's the definition of a promiscuous buyer. But Mosquito Squad engineered a completely different architecture. They don't sell individual visits. They sell a seasonal subscription.
Right, so depending on where you live, you subscribe to a package of 8 to 12 automated treatments.
Yeah. You input your credit card once in the spring, and you never think about it again. The technicians just show up on a predetermined schedule, spray the yard, and your card is billed automatically.
The operational efficiency alone is massive, but how does this change the valuation of a localized blue-collar service business?
Well, let's look at the broader market data. Small businesses doing under $500,000 in sales almost universally trade at that baseline multiple of around 2.6 times pre-tax profit.
Okay, 2.6 is the baseline.
But when you isolate the transaction data for Mosquito Squad franchises sold over a 5-year period,
Mhm.
a completely different pattern emerges.
Hmm.
These were small local operations, average revenues around $463,000.
And what did they sell for?
They consistently sold for 3.7 times their pre-tax profit.
3.7, that's a huge jump.
It's a 42% valuation premium over their peers in the traditional service sector.
And buyers weren't paying that premium because their bug spray was magically better or their trucks were shinier.
Nope, they paid a 42% premium because 73% of Mosquito Squad's seasonal contracts automatically renew every single year.
Wow. So the buyer stepping in on day one just inherits this mathematically predictable foundation of revenue.
Exactly. The multiplier gap is real, whether you're selling software code or bug spray. But, the valuation premium is ultimately a lagging indicator. It's the end result of changing the daily physics of the business.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of lifetime value. Right. And this operational superpower of smoothing out unpredictable demand.
Yes. The foundational shift here is moving from the transactional mindset of, say, a $29 sale to the relational mindset of a $4,000 sale.
To really visualize this, we need to look at the structural nightmare of a traditional retail flower shop.
Oh, man. The traditional florist is entirely dependent on foot traffic and highly seasonal, impulse-driven demand.
Right. And to capture that foot traffic, they have to sign these wildly expensive leases for prime retail storefronts. They're paying massive premiums per square foot.
And because their revenue is totally concentrated around a handful of holidays, like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, they have to pour capital into local advertising just to scream above the noise.
Hoping to convince some transient buyer to walk through their door instead of the florist 3 blocks down?
Exactly. And when that buyer finally walks in, what happens? They spend $50 on a bouquet, the transaction is done, they leave, and the florist have absolutely no guarantee they will ever see that person again.
They have to wake up the next morning and start the whole expensive acquisition process over. The cost of acquiring that customer is amortized over just one single transaction.
Which totally obliterates the profit margin.
Right. Now contrast that desperate scramble with the architecture of H-Bloom.
H-Bloom is brilliant. They envision themselves as the subscription engine for fresh-cut flowers. Instead of fighting for that chaotic retail consumer, they targeted the hospitality and corporate sectors.
Hotels, luxury spas, high-end restaurants.
Right. And they offer them a subscription for automated weekly or biweekly floral arrangements.
And the downstream effects of that one decision are profound. Because they don't rely on impulse walk-ins, they don't need a fancy storefront with a glass display case on a busy street.
Exactly. They could lease warehouse space in some 100-year-old industrial building. They might be paying $30 a square foot instead of the $150 a square foot the traditional florist pays.
So the subscription model instantly and drastically reduces their fixed overhead.
Yes, but the real magic is the expansion of the lifetime value. Think about it. A basic weekly arrangement from H-Bloom might cost a hotel $29.
Which in isolation is a tiny transaction.
Tiny. However, because it's an automatic recurring service and H-Bloom keeps their cancellation rate below 2% per month, the mathematical reality is that an average subscriber stays on the platform for roughly 3 years.
3 years, that's 156 weeks.
Yep. Which means that initial effort to secure a $29 weekly contract is actually the acquisition of a guaranteed $4,524 relationship.
Unbelievable. You only pay the acquisition cost once, but you harvest the margin 156 times.
And because that demand is locked in advance, it solves the second hidden killer of the traditional business model, which is operational spoilage.
Spoilage. This is a huge point. Because if you run a retail florist, your whole supply chain is just a guessing game.
A total guess.
Yes.
As Valentine's Day approaches, you have to place massive orders with wholesalers based entirely on intuition and, historical hope.
Right. If you guess low, you run out of roses by noon on February 14th, you alienate customers, you leave cash on the table.
But if you guess high, which most operators do because they're terrified of stocking out, you're left with a massive surplus of highly perishable inventory.
And the industry stats on this are genuinely brutal. A standard brick-and-mortar florist throws away between 30 and 50% of their inventory every single month.
50%. Half the product they buy just rots in the cooler before it can be sold. They're literally throwing bundles of cash into the dumpster.
That level of physical waste would bankrupt most manufacturing companies. But look at H. Bloom's supply chain. Because their customers are automatic, they know with absolute mathematical certainty exactly how many stems of tulips and roses they need for next Tuesday.
Right. They order exactly what they need, not a single stem more. As a result, H. Bloom's monthly spoilage rate is a microscopic 2%.
Compared to the industry average of up to 50%, that efficiency just falls straight to the bottom line.
It really does.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy to understand spoilage when we're talking about physical rotting flowers, right? But what if you run a service business?
Right, like an accounting firm or a marketing agency or consulting group, you might think, well, I'm immune to the spoilage problem because I don't have physical inventory.
But human capital spoils just as quickly.
Explain that because it's such a counterintuitive idea.
In a service business, your inventory is the billable hours of your salaried staff. Unpredictable demand creates massive human capital spoilage.
Right. If you land a massive project unexpectedly, your team is understaffed. They work weekends, they burn out, the quality degrades.
But then what happens when that big project finishes and the pipeline is empty?
You're paying expensive salaries for your team to sit at their desks and browse the internet?
Exactly. And that idle time is totally unrecoverable. An hour of unbilled human capital expires at the end of the day, just as surely as a cut flower wilts in a cooler. It is pure spoilage.
Wow. So the automatic customer model smooths out that volatile demand curve? When you know exactly what your recurring obligations are for the next quarter, you know exactly how many staff members to hire, train, and deploy.
You completely eliminate the frantic, expensive hiring spikes and the agonizing layoffs. You optimize your utilization rate, which protects your profit margins, and honestly just lowers the blood pressure of everyone in the company.
Which naturally leads us to the next massive operational advantage. Beyond optimizing supply chains and staffing, subscriptions solve two of the most annoying friction points of running any business.
Number one, figuring out what your customers actually want to buy next. And number two, getting them to actually pay you for the work you just did.
Let's start with market research. In a traditional corporate environment, innovation relies on really expensive synthetic data.
Right, you want to launch a new product, you hire an agency, recruit a focus group, put them behind a two-way mirror, and pay them for their opinions.
Or you commission these massive consumer surveys. It costs tens of thousands of dollars, takes months, and the data is often flawed anyway because people behave differently in a sterile room than they do in the real world with their own wallets.
But the subscription model turns this entirely upside down. Instead of paying for artificial research, subscription companies are actually paid by their customers to conduct real-time behavioral market research.
The book uses Joe Crisara as an example here, right? He runs contractorselling.com.
Yes, Joe Crisara. So he targets tradespeople, plumbers, electricians, HVAC owners.
Yeah.
And he charges them an $89 monthly subscription fee for access to a private forum, training videos, and business tips.
Okay, but a massive portion of his annual profit actually comes from hosting these high-ticket, live, in-person conferences.
Right. And planning a live conference is a huge financial risk. You book a hotel ballroom, you guarantee room nights, you pay speaker fees up front. If you pick a theme the audience doesn't care about, the event flops and you lose hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But Coursera has this massive structural advantage. He doesn't have to guess what his audience wants.
Not at all. He just spends time monitoring the activity in his $89 a month subscription forum. He looks at the analytics. He sees exactly which training videos get the most views. He reads the comment threads to see which operational problems are causing the most debate.
He is tapping into a real-time stream of verified behavioral data from people who have already proven they are willing to spend money.
Exactly. So when he designs the agenda for his massive high-risk live conference, he simply takes the most popular topics from the forum and puts them on the main stage.
He uses the automated low-ticket subscription engine to completely de-risk the high-ticket event. It's brilliant.
It really is. Another fascinating execution of this is ConsciousBox.
Oh yeah, they operate in the physical goods space.
Right. They charge subscribers $20 a month to get a curated box of natural, GMO-free, ethically sourced product samples. But they realized that just shipping the box was leaving the most valuable asset on the table. They needed a feedback loop.
So they engineered this really clever gamification system. They actively incentivize their subscribers to review the samples.
Yep. If a subscriber logs in and leaves a detailed review, they get 10 points. Once they hit 100 points, they earn a $1 credit to use in the Conscious Box online store, where they sell the full-size versions.
And the incentive structure works perfectly. Between 5 and 20% of their entire subscriber base logs in and rates the samples every single month.
Which, across a large user base, is a staggering volume of consumer sentiment data.
And the beauty is how they leverage it. Defensively, first of all. They don't have to guess which full-size products to stock in their e-commerce store, which makes up about 10% of their revenue.
Right, they just look at the data, see the clear winners, and stock those. Zero inventory risk. But more importantly, they monetize the data by providing it back to the original manufacturers.
Oh, this is huge. Imagine being a boutique organic soap maker. Getting shelf space at Whole Foods is basically impossible without data proving it'll sell.
But Conscious Box can hand that soap maker a detailed, statistically significant report showing exactly how a highly targeted demographic reacted to their soap. What they liked about the scent, what they hated about the packaging.
That feedback loop is infinitely more valuable than an artificial focus group. And Conscious Box gets paid by the consumer to generate it.
It's just a brilliantly elegant closed loop. But, if we're talking about elegant solutions to massive business problems, we have to talk about cash flow.
Oh, cash flow. The ability to get paid automatically is arguably the most oxygenating aspect of this whole transition.
It really is. If you mention accounts receivable to anyone running a traditional B2B company, you can literally see their blood pressure spike.
Because the standard B2B cash flow cycle is just inherently hostile to the vendor. You secure the contract, you buy materials, you do the work, you finish the project.
And only then do you generate an invoice. You send it to the client's accounting department. It enters this labyrinth of approvals.
And the terms might say 30 days, but the reality of corporate finance often pushes that to 60 or 90 days. You are effectively acting as an interest-free bank for your massive corporate clients.
You've fronted all the capital, met payroll, and you're just holding your breath, waiting for the check to clear.
Yeah.
It is the #1 reason profitable companies go bankrupt. They run out of cash waiting to get paid.
The book uses Stuart Hunt and Associates to illustrate how toxic this cycle can be and how the subscription model completely reverses it.
Yeah, Stuart Hunt and Associates, they're this highly specialized company in Edmonton that manages radioactive waste disposal.
Radioactive waste.
Okay. They do these massive cleanup operations for nuclear facilities and industrial mining core. And the cash flow on these projects is agonizing. They deploy expensive gear, highly trained personnel, do the cleanup, and routinely wait 120 days for the check.
Wow. A third of a year carrying that massive financial burden.
Exactly. But they have a secondary division. They also service small, portable radioactive sources, like the security wands used at airport checkpoints.
Right? Those have tiny radioactive isotopes to detect explosives, and by law, they have to be tested every year to make sure they aren't leaking. Stuart Hunt did thousands of these wipe tests.
And for years, they treated these tiny tests the exact same way they treated the massive nuclear cleanup jobs. The fee for the test was roughly $100.
So they do the test, mail the wand back, and then generate a $100 invoice.
Which created an absolute administrative disaster.
Oh.
While a mining corporation will eventually pay a six-figure invoice, a $100 invoice sent to a regional airport subcontractor often just gets lost or ignored.
So Stuart Hunt found themselves employing 2 full-time bookkeepers just to manage accounts receivable for this division.
Yeah, one employee spent nearly her entire week just making phone calls, trying to chase down delinquent $100 payments.
That is insane math. You are paying a salaried employee tens of thousands of dollars a year purely to chase down pennies.
And they still had to write off significant bad debt because the cost of legally pursuing the payment was higher than the invoice itself.
But then Sean Hunt, the founder's son, looked at this and realized something crucial. The wipe test is mandated by federal law. The client absolutely has to have it done every year. It's not discretionary.
Right. Sending invoices for an inevitable recurring service is a structural error, so he redesigned it into a subscription.
Instead of doing the work and begging for the money, they required the client to put a credit card on file. When the annual test date approached, they automatically billed the card for the $100, and only then did they initiate the testing.
The administrative burden vanished overnight. The bookkeeper started doing analytical work instead of debt collection. Bad debt dropped to zero. But the most profound implication, and this is what every entrepreneur needs to understand, is that it reversed the cash conversion cycle.
Let's explore that, because the cash conversion cycle is literally the invisible engine of growth.
It is. In a traditional model, You have a positive cash conversion cycle. Cash leaves your bank account to pay for labor and materials long before cash enters your bank account from the client.
So to grow, you need massive reserves of working capital, or you have to take on expensive debt. Growth literally consumes cash.
But the subscription model, when billed in advance, creates a negative cash conversion cycle. Look at Amazon Prime.
Right, you sign up for Prime, you pay your $139 on day one. At that exact moment, Amazon hasn't shipped you anything, they haven't streamed a single movie, they've incurred zero marginal cost for you, but they have your cash.
They get the cash first, deliver value later. A negative cash conversion cycle means that as you grow, your bank balance increases before your costs increase. You are literally funding your own massive expansion using your customers' money, interest-free.
It's the ultimate financial leverage, and once you have that leverage, once they've entered their credit card, you fundamentally alter their psychological behavior in the marketplace. Which brings us to stickiness and the expansion of the sale.
Let's talk about stickiness, because it cures the exhausting reality of the promiscuous consumer.
I have to use an analogy here to show just how fickle we all are as buyers. Imagine you own a 100-pound Pyrenean mountain dog.
Okay, a massive dog.
Massive. It eats 2 enormous bowls of specialized kibble every single day. You are burning through heavy bags of dog food constantly. It's a significant, unavoidable expense. So as a traditional consumer, how do you behave? You ruthlessly hunt for convenience and low prices. Every couple of weeks, you drag yourself to the big box pet store, wrestle a 40-pound bag into your cart, wait in line. If you see a different brand on sale at the grocery store, you buy that instead.
If someone mails you a 20% off coupon, you instantly switch loyalties.
Exactly. You have zero allegiance. You are entirely promiscuous, driven solely by the immediate transaction.
And for a traditional retailer, your behavior is terrifying. Because you have no loyalty, they have to constantly spend marketing dollars to win your attention back every 14 days. They're always playing defense.
Now, introduce Amazon's Subscribe and Save program into this. Amazon sees your consumption velocity. They say, we know you need this heavy bag every 2 weeks. Click this button to subscribe. We'll deliver it to your porch exactly when you need it, and we'll give you a permanent 5% discount.
The moment you click that subscribe button, your psychology shifts completely. You are no longer a promiscuous buyer.
That's the crucial mechanism. Amazon hasn't just won a sale, they have removed me from the market entirely.
When that competitor's coupon arrives in the mail, you don't even read it. It goes in the recycling bin because your dog food problem is solved on autopilot. You don't even look down the pet food aisle at the grocery store.
The subscription creates this invisible, impenetrable barrier around the customer. You have locked out the competition.
And this locked-in status is not a barrier to further sales. It's actually a catalyst for them.
This is a huge fear for owners, right? They think, if I switch to a subscription, I'll cannibalize my highly profitable, large one-off sales. They won't buy anything extra.
Right, but the empirical data proves the exact opposite, because the subscription fundamentally changes the nature of the relationship.
In a transactional model, every time you reach out, the customer knows you're trying to extract money. Their defenses are up.
But in a subscription model, you have an ongoing, trusted relationship where you are consistently delivering value in the background. The payment friction is gone because the card is on file.
H. Bloom is the perfect proof of this. The hotel manager who subscribes to the $29 weekly lobby flowers doesn't stop needing flowers for special occasions.
When Administrative Professionals Day comes, or a VIP needs a massive suite arrangement, the manager doesn't go back to the open market. They don't call the traditional florist.
Why would they? They already have a trusted vendor. It takes one email. Add a massive $300 arrangement to our delivery next week. Friction is zero.
And H. Bloom's internal data shows that for every $10 subscribers pay in recurring revenue, those exact same subscribers generate an additional $3 in highly profitable one-shot special event orders.
The subscription doesn't kill the one-off sale. It acts as the foundational anchor that makes capturing those one-off sales infinitely easier and cheaper.
Exactly. So we've built this overwhelming case right. It increases the valuation multiplier, smooths out unpredictable demand, eliminates spoilage, funds market research, reverses cash flow, locks out competitors, and creates a foundation for cross-selling.
It even acts as a buffer during recessions because people don't easily cancel convenient, integrated, automated services.
The logical argument is airtight.
It is. However, recognizing the destination is beautiful does not make crossing the desert any less terrifying.
Yeah, yes. We have to address the massive, terrifying elephant in the room.
I need to put on the hat of a skeptical chief financial officer right now and push back. Because if I run a successful traditional business, I'm listening to this, I'm doing the math, and I am hyperventilating.
You are looking at the transition period, what we call the P&L challenge.
Yes. The transition looks like financial suicide on paper. Let's walk through it. Say I sell software. In my traditional model, my sales team closes a deal, the client writes a check for $1,200, I deposit it today, my profit and loss statement reflects a massive influx of cash, I can make payroll, pay rent.
Right. And then you switch to a $100 a month subscription.
Yes. In month one, my sales team does the exact same amount of work. But instead of $1,200, I collect $100. My top-line revenue just fell off a cliff. My expenses haven't changed, but my cash influx is decimated. I am insolvent in 30 days. If I show my new P&L to my banker to renew my line of credit, they'll laugh me out of the room. How does an ongoing business survive this?
It is the most critical question. And it's exactly why thousands of operators understand the model intellectually but never actually execute the pivot. They cannot stomach the short-term optical pain.
It's the constraints of generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, right?
Exactly. Under GAAP, you cannot recognize the full value of a contract up front. You must spread it over the life of the delivery. So your P&L will look horrific at first. The revenue line shrinks, profit margins compress.
You're asking an entrepreneur who spent their life driving numbers up and to the right to intentionally drive them straight down.
It's a massive psychological hurdle. You're trading a short-term cash injection for long-term compounding wealth. But the short-term hurts.
So what's the tactical solution? If I don't have millions in a war chest, do I just go beg venture capitalists to flip my payroll and give up half my equity?
You can, and hyper-growth tech companies like WhatsApp do. But for most traditional businesses, taking massive dilution isn't necessary. The framework provides a bootstrap strategy, basically. Build a new bridge while you're still driving revenue across the old one.
Using the cash flow from the traditional high-stress engine to slowly fund the automated engine.
Precisely. You don't burn the boats on day one. Look at Basecamp, the project management software company.
Right, formerly 37 Signals. They're legends for being bootstrapped. But they started as a high-end web design agency.
Operating the exact sell-and-do model Warlow struggled with. They pitched massive clients, built custom sites, collected large one-shot fees. But they realized existing project management tools were terrible, so they built their own internal tool.
And that prototype became Basecamp. They started selling it on a subscription for about $20 a month.
But they did not shut down the web design agency when they launched it. They ran the two models in parallel for an entire year. The custom agency was the cash cow. It funded the salaries and server costs, while Basecamp quietly accumulated its $20 users.
They subsidized the slow-burning recurring engine with the grueling traditional work. They didn't face the P&L cliff because the agency propped up the numbers.
Exactly. And eventually, the compounding math took over. Once Basecamp's recurring revenue could sustain the whole company, they simply stopped accepting custom web design projects. They crossed the desert entirely on their own cash.
FreshBooks did the exact same thing. Mike McDermott was running a 4-person design studio. He got mad at Microsoft Word, lost an invoice, and decided to code a cloud-based solution.
He spent 16 months coding it on the side. He funded his time entirely by servicing his traditional design clients. And when he launched FreshBooks, the initial traction was agonizingly slow. It took him 24 months just to get 10 paying customers at $99 a month.
2 years to reach $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue. If he had shut down his agency, he would have starved in 90 days. Didn't he run it out of his parents' basement for a while?
For 3.5 years. To keep overhead near zero, it is the definition of the slow grind. But because he didn't rely on outside funding, he retained total control.
The critical takeaway here is you do not have to flip a switch and risk bankruptcy overnight. You can systematically use your traditional business as the economic engine to slowly transition into the promised land of subscriptions.
Exactly.
So as we bring all this together, the sheer weight of this argument is impossible to ignore. We've seen how it exponentially increases valuation, how it elevates lifetime value from $29 to over $4,000, how predictable demand eliminates spoilage, how it turns market research into a profit center, how billing in advance reverses the cash conversion cycle, and how convenience locks out competitors.
When you synthesize all of that, it points to one profound structural truth. Transitioning to an automatic customer model is fundamentally a shift from the exhausting mechanics of hunting to the compounding leverage of farming.
Hunting versus farming. I love that. The traditional model is pure hunting. It's thrilling. The dopamine hit of closing a deal is huge, but it's exhausting. You track the kill, you feast, and the next morning you wake up with an empty stomach and have to do it all over again. The environment dictates your survival.
But a farmer operates on a totally different timeline and risk profile. They spend the upfront capital and effort to cultivate the soil. It requires immense patience, like we saw with the P&L challenge. You have to weather the seasons where the crop is growing but not yielding cash.
But once that root system is established,
The farmer yields a predictable, reliable harvest year after year from the exact same plot of land. The environment no longer controls their daily survival. The end result is you build a business that serves your life, rather than enslaving your schedule.
you increase your net worth, lower your anxiety, eliminate waste, get upfront cash, and dig a moat around your customers. You now have the undeniable business case for why your company needs to make this transition.
But understanding why is only half the battle. The real challenge is in the execution. How do you practically design a subscription that people actually want to buy, especially if you think your industry is too unique or traditional?
And that is exactly what we will dismantle in our next deep dive. We'll open up the blueprints of different successful subscription models, from the simplifier to the peace of mind model, and help you find the perfect fit for your operations. But before we wrap up today, we want to leave you with one final practical provocation.
Look ahead at your operational schedule for the coming week.
Yeah, open your calendar for tomorrow morning. Look at your meetings. How much of your valuable time and your team's energy is going to be spent tracking down, pitching, and trying to win over a customer who already bought from you last year? You did the hard work of acquiring them once, yet you are forced to convince them all over again.
Consider the massive amount of trap potential in your organization. What could you and your team build, create, or achieve if you engineered a system where you never had to convince them twice? For the last 20 years, we've basically been told this one huge, unbreakable rule about the internet, which is, information wants to be free.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, we've all been totally conditioned by the Google era, right? We just believe that if there's a fact or some strategy out there, you should be able to just type it in and get it in like 0.3 seconds.
Exactly, without spending a single dime.
Totally. But there's actually a second half to that famous quote, is originally by this tech pioneer, Stuart Brand, and everyone always forgets the second part.
Oh, yeah, the part about information wanting to be expensive.
Yes. He said information wants to be free because the cost of getting it out there keeps dropping. But he also said it wants to be expensive because, the right information in the right hands is incredibly valuable.
It's honestly, it's the great paradox of the digital age, really.
It really is.
Because we are just drowning in this sea of free, commoditized noise, really. And that actually creates this intense craving for, well, highly curated, specialized wisdom.
I mean, we want someone to filter it for us.
Exactly. And the assumption that everything is just a commodity is, it's blinding a lot of entrepreneurs to the gold mine that's sitting right inside their own heads.
Which is exactly why I've been thinking about this constantly ever since we started going through John Warlow's research on building subscription businesses.
Right. It's such a good breakdown.
It is. And if you're listening to this and you've ever felt like your deep expertise is just undervalued, well, you are going to love what we explore today. We are focusing squarely on Chapter 4, which outlines the membership website model.
Yeah, which completely flips the script on how we value online content.
It really does.
Yeah.
In just, a few minutes, we're going to unpack how you can take your most specialized knowledge, lock it behind a paywall, and turn those random one-off clients into a highly predictable, recurring cash engine.
Which, I mean, that's the dream, right? Massively increasing the underlying value of your business.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the modern instinct for creators today is just to build a massive audience by giving everything away for free on social media.
Yeah, the hope is always that you'll eventually monetize like a tiny fraction of a percent through ads or sponsorships.
Right, the influencer model.
Yeah,
But the membership model argues the exact opposite of that.
totally. It says you don't actually need a million casual scrollers. You just need a highly concentrated micro community.
A community that actually pays a recurring fee for exclusive access. But to really understand why anyone would pull out their credit card for information in the year 2026, we kind of have to rewind.
Yeah, we have to look at the wreckage of the traditional publishing industry.
Oh, man, yeah. Because for a long time, the folks selling information were just getting absolutely decimated.
They were. The initial wave of the internet was, well, it was deeply traumatic for traditional media.
I can imagine.
Think about the basic economics of, like, a physical magazine or a newspaper before the web. The barrier to entry wasn't just the writing, it was the distribution.
Right. Printing on actual physical paper.
Yeah, printing it, loading those stacks onto diesel trucks, shipping them to newsstands across the country. It was incredibly capital intensive.
So the moat wasn't necessarily just having the best journalists. The moat was literally owning the printing press and the delivery trucks.
Precisely. So when the internet came along and just eliminated those distribution costs overnight, suddenly a teenager in a basement could publish an article that reached, the same number of people as a major broadsheet.
With a marginal cost of zero.
Exactly. And that collapse and friction led to this massive oversupply of general information.
Right. Everyone had a blog.
Yeah. And consumers looked at this infinite buffet and collectively decided, well, we are never going to pay for a generic news article or a how-to guide ever again.
And we all saw the aftermath of that. Major publications slashing budgets, the rise of clickbait, just a hunt for ad revenue. It was a race to the bottom.
It really was. But underneath all that chaos, consumer psychology was actually subtly shifting.
Because when general information becomes totally free and ubiquitous, it just loses its perceived value.
Yes. If everyone has access to the exact same top 10 list of generic business tips, those tips can't give you a competitive advantage.
Right. They're useless for getting ahead, which is where our source brings up Chris Anderson's concept of the long tail, right?
Yeah, the long tail is so crucial here because historically, due to limited physical shelf space, retail and media had to cater to the lowest common denominator.
Like a bookstore only stocking bestsellers.
Exactly. They only stocked titles they knew would sell thousands of copies. A local newspaper only had so many pages, so they just covered broad topics like local politics, the weather, major sports.
But the internet has infinite shelf space.
Infinite, meaning you no longer have to settle for broad, watered-down content.
So if you have an incredibly obscure, deeply specific passion, the internet just lets you bypass the mainstream entirely.
Let's say your passion is the sport of curling.
Okay, curling, love it.
In the pre-internet days, you had to wait for the Winter Olympics every 4 years just to see a tiny article in your local paper.
Right, maybe a blurry photo.
Yeah. But now you can find a podcast, a dedicated forum, and a YouTube channel that's entirely about the sweeping techniques of curling.
That is so true. And as our ability to find our specific tribes increased, our tolerance for that generic mass market information just plummeted.
We realized that if we wanted truly excellent world-class material tailored to our weird specific passions, well, the free stuff just wasn't going to cut it anymore.
The free stuff is basically just the appetizer.
Yeah, exactly.
And that realization that there is a ceiling to free content is what really birthed the modern premium niche market. The sources highlight this guy named Mark Spagnuolo, and it's a perfect illustration of this.
Oh, the Wood Whisperer Guild.
Yes. So he runs this platform, and he charges hobby cabinet makers and woodworking enthusiasts $129 a year.
$129 just for woodworking videos.
Right. And he is not teaching people how to, hammer a nail or hang a picture frame. He is deep in the weeds of advanced joinery and heirloom furniture construction.
And thousands of people are voluntarily paying that annual fee. It really begs a look at the psychology of the modern hobbyist.
Because if I'm the listener, I'm thinking, wait, can't someone just Google how to build a cabinet? Why are they paying $130 a year?
Well, think about it. The amateur woodworker has probably already exhausted all the free tutorials online. They've watched all the 5-minute hack videos.
Sure.
But when they're ready to invest 50 hours of their weekend and, hundreds of dollars in raw mahogany into building a dining room table, they don't want a fragmented, ad-interrupted YouTube video from some unverified creator.
Right. They want a trusted, structured curriculum from an actual master.
Exactly. They are paying for certainty and curation.
They are paying for the removal of risk. Because if you mess up a cut on a piece of really expensive hardwood because some free blog post gave you the wrong measurement, you just lost way more money than the cost of the subscription.
That risk mitigation is a massive driver.
It makes total sense.
There's another compelling case study from the material, a platform called Dream of Italy. It was founded by Kathy McCabe.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
Right. So she spent her life traveling back to her Italian homeland, and she built this staggering network of local contacts. We're talking rural olive farmers, boutique hoteliers, high-end restaurateurs.
And she leverages those lifelong connections to provide her subscribers with deep insider travel intelligence.
Yeah. And I try to put myself in the shoes of someone planning an Italian vacation today. The first instinct is just to go to TripAdvisor, right?
Right, because it's free. Millions of reviews.
But that is exactly the problem. It's millions of reviews from random strangers with completely unknown tastes, and it's all mixed in with fake reviews and SEO spam.
Yeah, if I'm spending $10,000 on a once-in-a-lifetime anniversary trip to Rome, free information is actually a huge liability.
Because the free information is static and heavily manipulated. The true value Kathy McCabe provides is the currency of her network.
She actually knows what's happening right now.
Yes, she knows the exact week a Michelin-starred chef leaves a famous restaurant, meaning the food is about to decline.
Wow.
Or she knows when a beautiful unlisted pension opens its doors way before the travel bloggers find out.
So it's the exclusivity.
Yeah.
It's knowing something that all the other tourists walking around the Colosseum just don't know.
It is the information advantage. And to really grasp the mechanics of why this works so well, we actually need to look far beyond the digital age. The architecture of this business model dates back to the 1500s.
Okay, wait, the 1500s, the age of discovery. Walk me through this.
Okay, so in the 16th century, European map publishers were dealing with an incredibly volatile geopolitical landscape.
Right, they were just discovering the new world.
Exactly. The new world was being explored, new trade routes to spices and silks were being established, and the actual map of the world was literally changing every few months.
And it must have been chaos.
It was. And funding an expedition to chart a new coastline was an astronomical financial risk.
Yeah.
I mean, ships sank, crews mutinied, diseases wiped out entire fleets.
So a single map publisher couldn't possibly bankroll a whole armada just to draw a new map.
They absolutely couldn't, so they created a subscription model.
In the 1500s, that is wild.
Yeah. They approached the academic and noble classes of Europe and offered them a membership. The nobles would pay a recurring fee to fund these expeditions.
Ah, so they were essentially crowdfunding.
Yes, crowdfunding the exploration of the planet. And in exchange, as the ships returned and the cartographers updated their charts, the subscribers would be the very first to receive the newest, most accurate maps.
That is fascinating. The publishers aggregated the financial risk. But what was the incentive for some noble sitting in a castle in France to pay for a map of a place he was never ever going to visit?
Pure economic and political leverage.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. If you were an investor in the spice trade or maybe a monarch managing a navy, having a map that showed a safer, faster route to India before your competitors knew about it, that was worth its weight in gold.
Because the landscape was constantly shifting.
Exactly. A static 10-year-old map was basically useless and potentially deadly. They were paying a premium for an evolving, exclusive data set that gave them an undeniable edge.
And human nature just hasn't changed a bit in 500 years.
Not at all.
The terrain we are navigating has just shifted from oceans to digital markets and hyper-niche hobbies. So when someone subscribes to the Wood Whisperer Guild or Dream of Italy today, they're doing the exact same thing those European nobles did.
Spot on. They aren't buying a static encyclopedia. They are securing a trusted guide to help them navigate a landscape that is constantly changing.
So the shifting landscape is the actual engine of the recurring revenue.
Yes. If your knowledge is static like, say, a book on the history of the Roman Empire, a customer buys it once, reads it, and their problem is solved.
Right. They will never pay you a monthly fee for that.
Never. But if the landscape is dynamic, the subscription becomes an operational necessity just to stay current.
That is such a huge takeaway for anyone listening who is thinking about launching one of these sites. You cannot just put a basic how-to guide behind a paywall and expect a monthly check.
No, it will fail.
You have to locate a tightly defined market where the facts on the ground are always moving, and you have to position yourself as the cartographer who charts those changes in real time.
Perfectly said. But, as lucrative as the hobbyist and consumer markets can be, there is a distinct ceiling to what a woodworking enthusiast will pay for their weekend passion.
Right, because the consumer wallet is always constrained by discretionary income. It's extra money.
Exactly. Which brings us to a massive pivot in the data. A hobbyist might happily pay $100 a year. But what happens when the information you are selling isn't just for a fun weekend project?
What happens when a subscriber's mortgage, their payroll, and their entire livelihood depend on the knowledge you possess?
The economics of the model completely transform. You move from a nice lifestyle business into an absolute gold mine.
The B2B gold mine.
Yes. The most durable, financially dominant membership websites almost universally focus on business to business or B2B markets. They target specific operational pain points for industry professionals.
The research quotes Tim Kerber on this, right? He runs MemberGate.
Yeah, MemberGate is a membership software platform, so he processes the back-end infrastructure for countless subscription sites. He literally sees the actual conversion metrics and churn rates across every industry.
And what does he say?
He states unequivocally that when a person's livelihood is involved, the friction of pulling out a credit card almost entirely disappears.
That makes total sense.
We can observe this really clearly by looking at the journey of Kathy Blake. She provides one of the most compelling blueprints for this entire concept.
Tell me about Kathy Blake.
Well, she wasn't a tech entrepreneur, she was a practitioner. She spent 40 years running a physical dance studio in New Hampshire.
40 years, wow.
Managing hundreds of students, dealing with demanding parents, hiring instructors, and balancing the books. Over 4 decades, she absorbed every conceivable lesson about how to squeeze a profit out of a notoriously difficult brick-and-mortar business model.
And rather than just writing a memoir about it, she partnered with a woman named Suzanne and created dancestudioowner.com.
Yes, they took all of that hard-won, hyper-specific operational genius and gated it behind a membership site aimed exclusively at other ambitious dance studio owners across the country.
The brilliance of that pivot really cannot be overstated. I mean, consider the psychological difference between a consumer buying a subscription and a business owner buying one.
It's night and day.
Let me try to build a framework for this, just to make it concrete. Imagine I'm a huge football fan. I buy a premium monthly magazine subscription that gives me deep dive statistics on my favorite team, player interviews, draft analysis, all that.
Okay. Yeah.
That subscription is purely a luxury. It comes out of my entertainment budget. If I lose my job or if inflation spikes, that magazine is the very first thing I cancel.
Because it is entirely discretionary.
Right. Now, flip this scenario. I am no longer a fan of the couch. I am the head coach of a struggling college football team.
Okay. Totally different stakes.
Completely. And I buy a monthly subscription to a digital playbook created by a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. This site breaks down exactly how to run drills, how to counter specific offenses, and how to manage the clock.
The categorization of that expense fundamentally changes for you.
Yes. You are no longer spending entertainment dollars. You are spending operational budget.
If that playbook helps your team win 3 more games a season, it secures your job, it boosts ticket sales, and it potentially earns you a $1 million contract extension.
It is an investment with a massive immediate ROI. One is a luxury, the other is a tool for survival and growth.
And that is exactly what sites like Dance Studio Owner are doing. And the sources list several other fascinating examples that follow this identical playbook.
Like restaurantowner.com.
Yes, because cooking is an art, but running a restaurant is a brutal exercise in spreadsheet management. Most chefs fail because they don't know how to calculate food cost percentages or manage kitchen labor curves.
They need the operational playbook. What was the other one? Contractorselling.com?
Yeah, contractorselling.com, run by a specialist named Joe Crisara. He targets plumbers, electricians, and HVAC technicians.
Right. These are highly skilled tradespeople who know how to fix a pipe or wire a breaker, but they often struggle immensely with the actual sales process.
Exactly. They don't know how to bid a job profitably or how to handle a homeowner who thinks the estimate is just too high.
So Crisara charges them a monthly, let's say it's $89 a month, to access his sales scripts, his closing techniques, and his business templates.
And think about the math on that.
It's crazy. If a plumber uses one single script from that website, and it helps him land a $10,000 commercial contract instead of losing the bid, that $89 subscription just paid for itself for the next 10 years.
The value proposition is undeniably strong. And furthermore, it engineers a remarkable level of resilience into the business model itself.
Resilience against what?
Think about the vulnerability of most businesses during a severe economic downturn.
Oh, right. Recessions are usually bloodbaths for subscriptions. Everyone audits their credit card statements and just starts ruthlessly cutting the fat.
True for consumers, yes.
Yeah.
But the B2B dynamic creates this incredible inoculation effect.
How so?
Well, if a plumbing business is struggling during a recession, money is tight, and leads are drying up. The absolute worst thing that business owner could do is cancel the subscription to the platform that is actively teaching them how to close the few leads they still have.
Wow. Yeah, that would be business suicide.
Exactly. When economic winter hits, your B2B membership site isn't a luxury they cut. It becomes the emergency generator they rely on to keep the lights on. You make yourself structurally essential to their survival.
That is such a profound realization. So if you are listening to this and you have built an above-average level of profitability in a competitive... So, okay, you build the architecture. You target a highly specific, painful B2B niche. You stack up the subscribers, and suddenly you are generating this fantastic, predictable, monthly, recurring revenue.
And most entrepreneurs would look at that and say, I've won the game. I can retire to the beach.
Right. But the sources suggest that the recurring revenue, as beautiful as it is really just the tip of the iceberg.
It is just the opening act. The truly massive windfalls happen in the back-end valuation when the corporate giants start taking notice of what you've aggregated.
The Trojan horse. To understand the end game of this model, we have to return to Kathy Blake and her dance studios.
Her story provides an absolute masterclass in how modern businesses are valued by acquirers.
Let's lay out the timeline for the listener, because it is staggering. Kathy Blake runs her brick-and-mortar dance studio in New Hampshire for 40 years. She built a real, physical community, hundreds of kids walking through those doors every week.
Yep.
And in all of those 4 decades of physical operation, she never once received a serious offer from an outside company to buy her studio.
Because the physical business, while profitable for her lifestyle, was completely unscalable and localized. It held almost zero strategic value to a larger corporate entity.
But then she launches dancestudioowner.com. And just 5 years into running this digital membership site, 5 years versus 40 years, she and her partner are approached for an acquisition.
And the buyer isn't a local competitor.
No. The buyer is Revolution Dancewear, which is a massive apparel manufacturer posting over $37 million in annual sales.
This is the crux of the entire valuation argument. Ask yourself, why does a $37 million apparel giant, whose core competency is manufacturing and shipping tutus, leotards, and tap shoes, care about a digital forum run by 2 women from New Hampshire?
I mean, my initial assumption, and probably the assumption of most people looking at this, is that Revolution Dancewear simply wanted the cash flow.
Sure, the revenue.
Yeah, they saw a profitable website with low overhead and a steady stream of subscription revenue, and they just wanted to add those margins to their balance sheet.
The cash flow is a nice bonus, certainly. Financial buyers do love the predictability of subscription revenue because it guarantees future profits. But Revolution Dancewear was a strategic buyer, not just a financial one.
What's the difference?
They weren't buying a spreadsheet of monthly fees. They were buying a hyper-concentrated walled garden of their exact target demographic. They were buying market access.
Ah, I see. They bypass the entire marketing funnel.
Exactly.
Because Revolution Dancewear's entire business model depends on dance studio owners choosing to recommend their specific brand of shoes and apparel to thousands of parents every fall.
And historically, to get in front of those owners, Revolution would have to spend fortunes on Google Ads, fight against Facebook algorithms, send physical catalogs in the mail, or fly salespeople to really expensive trade shows.
It is a massive customer acquisition cost.
Huge. But by acquiring dancestudioowner.com, Revolution Dancewear inserted themselves directly into the daily, ongoing, trusted conversations of thousands of the exact decision makers they needed to reach.
They didn't just buy a website, they bought the watering hole.
They bought the distribution channel itself. Consider the macro version of this strategy, right? Think about Amazon Prime.
Okay, Amazon Prime.
When Amazon launched Prime, financial analysts were completely baffled. Why would a company offer unlimited 2-day shipping for a flat annual fee that barely even covered the postage costs?
Right. From a pure shipping margin perspective, it looked like a catastrophic loss leader.
Because Amazon wasn't trying to make money on the shipping. They were trying to alter human behavior.
Yes. Once you pay for Prime, your brain naturally dictates that you must maximize the value of that sunk cost.
Exactly. So instead of going to Google to search for batteries or a new toaster, you start going directly to Amazon.
Amazon bypassed the search engine entirely.
They used a membership to build a moat around the customer. And Revolution Dancewear executed the exact same playbook on a micro scale.
They bought the community to ensure that when a studio owner thinks about ordering recital costumes, they don't Google it. They go through the trusted ecosystem Revolution now owns.
Precisely.
But let me push back a little here, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener.
Okay, go for it.
Looking at Kathy Blake's multi-million-dollar exit is super inspiring, but is the sole purpose of building one of these sites just to dress it up for a corporate buyout? What if I want to run my business for the next 20 years, and I have zero interest in selling to a corporate giant? Does this whole walled garden theory still benefit me?
It benefits you immensely, arguably even more so if you keep it, because what you have engineered is a living, breathing, real-time focus group that actually pays you to participate in it.
Wait, a focus group that pays you? That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Think about the archaic, incredibly expensive ways legacy companies try to conduct market research.
Oh, it's terrible. They hire consultants, they run blind surveys with miserable response rates.
Or they fly a dozen people into a beige conference room, feed them stale sandwiches, and interrogate them behind a two-way mirror, desperately trying to guess what the market might want to buy next year.
It is wildly inefficient and heavily biased by the artificial environment.
But when you are the mayor of a vibrant membership site, you have a direct daily pipeline into the unvarnished psychology of your market.
You simply read the forums.
Yes. You watch the debates, you observe which video modules get the highest engagement and which downloadable templates are completely ignored.
You literally never have to guess what product to build next. Your paying audience is constantly raising their hands, outlining their exact pain points in excruciating detail.
The data generated by the community is often more valuable than the subscription revenue itself. It allows you to rapidly prototype solutions, knowing with near absolute certainty that a hungry market already exists for them.
Which naturally leads us right into perhaps the most lucrative mechanism of the entire membership model.
The cross-sell.
Yes, you don't have to wait for an acquisition to experience a massive windfall, and you don't have to rely solely on the slow drip of $29 a month. The absolute smartest operators in this space use that monthly subscription fee not as the end game, but as the opening act for a much larger monetization strategy. We need to talk about the art of the cross-sell.
The fundamental purpose of the initial membership fee isn't just revenue. It is to establish a commercial relationship.
Because the single hardest barrier in commerce is getting a prospect to pull out their credit card, input the numbers, and trust you for the very first time. The friction is immense.
It requires a huge leap of faith from the buyer. But once that transaction occurs, and assuming you actually deliver on your promise and provide value, that psychological barrier is breached.
The ice is broken.
The platform now serves as the perfect foundation of trust to offer significantly larger, higher-ticket items.
The masterclass in this strategy comes from the archives of Anne Holland.
Oh, she is brilliant at this.
She is a pioneer in the subscription publishing space. She built and sold multiple media properties, most notably Marketing Sherpa and later WhичText1.com.
Right. Marketing Sherpa was an information hub for digital marketers.
And her gateway product was famously cheap. She would sell highly detailed digital marketing case studies for just $7.
$7.
$7. I look at that number and I immediately think of volume. If I'm an outsider looking at her business, I'm assuming her entire model relies on driving massive amounts of web traffic and selling tens of thousands of these $7 PDFs every month just to keep the lights on.
It is the logical assumption, but it is completely wrong.
Why?
Because the $7 was never meant to be the primary profit driver. The brilliance of Anne Holland's model was the invisible machinery operating behind that $7 paywall. She employed a full-time, dedicated telemarketer whose entire job was triggered the very moment a $7 transaction cleared.
Wait, so whenever someone bought a $7 case study, the phone would ring?
The telemarketer would call the buyer.
That is wild.
The ostensible reason for the call was pure customer service. A white glove check-in to ensure the PDF downloaded correctly, that there were no formatting issues, and to ask if the buyer had any immediate questions about the material.
Now, I have to pause here. In the modern era of spam calls and extreme digital privacy, the idea of a telemarketer calling a customer over a $7 purchase feels incredibly intrusive, almost archaic. Doesn't that create friction?
If executed poorly, yes, it is a disaster. But if it's framed genuinely as customer support from a trusted brand, it operates as a powerful differentiator.
I guess that's true.
In a world of automated no-reply email receipts, A human being calling to ensure you received value is jarring in a positive way. It completely disarms the buyer.
And once the buyer's disarmed, the real objective of the call is revealed.
Exactly. The telemarketer would pivot. They would say, I'm so glad you found the case study on email marketing helpful. I just wanted to let you know we're actually hosting a live in-person summit focused entirely on advanced email marketing next month in your region. Because you are a member who just purchased this study, we'd love to invite you.
That is so smooth. And the conversion mechanics of this pivot are astonishing. Using this exact sequence, a $7 digital purchase followed by a human touch point, Ann Holland successfully sold 900 tickets to a live conference.
And those tickets were not $7.
No, they were $1,500 each. Let's just sit with that math for a second. She used a frictionless $7 gateway product to sift through the noise of the internet and identify the highly qualified, active buyers.
She filtered out the freebie seekers completely.
And then, riding the momentum of that initial trust, she converted a massive percentage of them into $1,500 customers. That's over $1 million in back-end revenue generated off the back of a $7 PDF.
It perfectly illustrates the leverage of the cross-sell within a trusted ecosystem.
Yeah.
But Ann Holland's research actually went even deeper than that.
Oh.
Yeah, she relentlessly tracked the conversion data and uncovered a rigid psychological timeline regarding when a customer is most likely to accept an upgrade or a cross-sell.
The famous 3-month rule.
Exactly. Her data proved conclusively that the absolute optimal window to sell a subscriber a higher ticket item is within the first 3 months of their initial similar purchase.
3 months feels incredibly tight. I mean, my instinct would be to wait. Let them enjoy the membership for a year, let them really steep in the community, build a long-term relationship, and then pitch them a $2,000 mastermind. Why is the window so short?
It comes down to the urgency of the initial pain point. People rarely buy information products when they are perfectly content. They buy them because they are in an active state of seeking solutions to an acute problem.
Right.
When they buy that $7 case study, their pain is at its absolute peak. Furthermore, they have just experienced the dopamine hit of taking action. They handed over their credit card, your company delivered the solution, and they are feeling validated and optimistic.
They are in momentum.
Yes. If you wait 12 months to pitch the conference, that initial regency has completely dissipated. The pain point has either been solved or they have simply learned to live with it.
The trust you build might still be intact, but the active, burning desire to spend money to fix the problem is just gone. The iron is no longer hot.
Let's try to map this onto a more universal consumer experience because it makes perfect sense when you step away from digital products. It is exactly the psychology of buying a new smartphone.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Walk me through it.
Okay, I walk into a store and my phone is broken, which is my acute pain point. I finally agree to spend $1,000 on a brand new device. The moment I say yes to the $1,000, my psychological defenses against spending drop completely. I am in buyer mode.
The major friction has already been overcome.
Right. So when the salesperson smoothly asks, would you like the $50 reinforced case, the $30 screen protector, and the $80 rapid wireless charger to go with that? I almost always say yes.
Because the extra $160 feels negligible compared to the $1,000 you just spent.
Exactly. And I am highly motivated to protect my new investment right now. But imagine if that same salesperson called me on the phone 6 months later. Hi, you bought a phone from us half a year ago. Do you want to buy a screen protector today?
You would hang up on them immediately.
Totally. The urgency's gone. I either already bought a cheap one online or I've accepted the risk of a scratched screen. The window closed.
That is the 3-month rule in action. And Ann Holland applied this exact gateway philosophy to her subsequent business, witchtest1.com. She offered weekly digital marketing A/B test results to enterprise marketing teams locked behind a subscription paywall.
But the subscription wasn't the main event.
No, the subscription generated healthy recurring revenue, but its true strategic purpose was to act as a qualifying filter for much larger, highly lucrative consulting contracts and corporate training seminars.
Which highlights a critical defense mechanism against the darkest shadow of the membership model, subscription fatigue.
Yes. Every subscription business on earth battles churn, the percentage of customers who cancel their membership every month. It is the law of digital gravity.
Eventually, people get tired of paying, or they feel they've extracted all the value they can from the core offering.
And if your entire business model relies solely on replacing the people who cancel their $29 monthly fee, you are on a perpetual treadmill. You are constantly sweating to outpace your own churn rate.
But by designing a high-ticket backend, like an annual summit, specialized coaching, or premium software tools, you fundamentally alter the economics of your business.
You transition your business from a slow, precarious drip into a robust cash spigot. Consider the lifetime value of a customer. One subscriber might stay for a year, paying $29 a month. That is $348 in total revenue.
But if you have structured your ecosystem so that 1 out of every 10 of those subscribers also purchases a $2,000 advanced coaching package within their first 3 months,
Your average revenue per user skyrockets. You no longer need thousands upon thousands of members to build $1 million business.
you can build a highly profitable empire with a small, deeply engaged tribe because the back-end cross-sells are subsidizing the front-end churn.
The practical takeaway for the listener is clear. Do not launch a membership site if the subscription is the only thing you have to sell.
The subscription builds the trust. The adjacent product builds the wealth.
It requires a holistic view of the customer journey, not just a transactional one.
Okay, so we've covered massive ground here. We understand the historical psychology of why people pay for evolving information. We know that B2B niches are the most resilient and lucrative. We see how the model builds sellable, strategic assets that bypass massive marketing costs. And we understand the mechanics of the 3-month cross-sell window.
That is a solid foundation.
If someone listening is nodding along, their brain is firing, and they are saying, I have 20 years of specialized knowledge in logistics, or dental practice management, or drone surveying. I am ready to build my walled garden today. What is the actual architectural blueprint?
How do you actually build it?
Yeah, how do the insiders actually build the machinery of these sites so they don't just crash and burn in the first 6 months?
Building a resilient membership architecture requires acknowledging how fragmented modern attention spans are. You cannot simply write a massive textbook-style blog post every week, slap a password on it, and expect people to stay subscribed.
People don't have the time to read textbooks anymore.
They don't. According to the successful operators outlined in the research, survival dictates 2 non-negotiable architectural pillars: multi-format content delivery and constantly evolving peer-to-peer forums.
Let's unpack the multiple formats first, because that sounds like a massive logistical headache for the creator. If I conduct a brilliant 1-hour interview with an industry luminary, what exactly do I have to do with it?
You have to process it into every conceivable medium your subscribers might prefer. First, you need the high-definition video of the interview, properly lit and edited, for the subscriber who wants to sit on their couch with an iPad and give it their full attention.
Okay, that's one.
Second, you must extract the audio, clean it up, and syndicate it into a private subscriber-only podcast feed.
Because a large portion of your audience will only consume content while commuting or working out.
Exactly. And third, you have to provide a meticulously formatted written transcript, complete with bolded headings and bulleted summaries.
For the busy executive who is sitting at their desk and only has 3 minutes to skim for the core actionable insights.
Exactly. By offering all 3 formats, you are engineering a bespoke premium experience. You are signaling to the subscriber that you respect their time and their preferred learning style, which reinforces the value of the monthly fee.
But there is a secondary, almost hidden benefit to the transcript format, isn't there? It's not just about user experience. It's about the underlying plumbing of the internet. It's about Google.
The SEO advantage is massive. Video and audio files, while highly engaging, are largely opaque to search engine crawlers. Google cannot easily index the spoken nuance of a 1-hour video.
Right, it can't watch the video for you.
But when you provide thousands of words of rich, context-heavy text transcripts, even if the bulk of that text is gated behind a paywall, you can strategically expose snippets, executive summaries, and targeted keywords on your public-facing teaser pages.
You're creating a massive web of long-tail keyword bait.
Exactly. When that obscure dental practice manager searches for a very specific phrase about insurance billing that you happen to discuss in a video interview, your text transcript catches that search query and pulls them right to your paywall.
It acts as an organic, perpetual lead generation machine.
But while the multi-format content gets the subscriber in the door, the second pillar, the evolving forum, is what actually keeps them there.
This is the secret sauce of retention. I always assume that if I subscribe to an expert's website, I am there solely to listen to the expert. But the data suggests something entirely different.
The data reveals a fascinating quirk of human behavior. People absolutely join a platform for the authority of the founder. They want access to your specific brain.
Makes sense.
But if your site is just a one-way broadcast of you lecturing to the audience, the perceived value will inevitably decline over time. Eventually, they will feel they have learned everything you have to teach.
They come for the content, but they stay for the community.
That is the mantra of the membership model. When you architect a robust, heavily moderated, and highly active forum, a magical transition occurs. The subscribers begin to generate the core value of the platform for each other.
Let's visualize that. Imagine our dance studio platform. An owner in Texas logs into the forum in a panic because she is facing a bizarre, highly specific zoning dispute with her local municipality regarding parking spaces.
Okay, very niche problem.
She posts her problem. You, the founder, might not know the answer, but within an hour, a studio owner in Florida jumps into the thread. She dealt with the exact same obscure zoning law 3 years ago, and she uploads the exact legal template she used to defeat it.
That interaction just saved the Texas owner thousands of dollars in legal fees and months of stress.
And the platform facilitated that massive, tangible win.
And crucially, you, the founder, did not have to write that legal template. You did not have to research the zoning laws. You merely provided the safe, gated environment where that peer-to-peer value exchange could occur.
The members are essentially doing the heavy lifting of content creation for you.
They really are.
But I can hear the skepticism from the listener right now. If I have to shoot and edit videos, manage private podcast feeds, format transcripts, heavily moderate a community forum, and act as a referee for hundreds of professionals, is this really the automated business we promised at the beginning of the deep dive?
It sounds suspiciously like a second exhausting full-time job.
Yeah, it does.
It is a highly valid critique, and addressing it requires understanding the fundamental difference between two operating philosophies that John Warlow defines: traditional brawn versus subscription brain.
Traditional brawn versus subscription brain. I love that framework. Break down the brawn first.
Traditional brawn is the default state of almost every service business and freelancer on Earth. It is the exhausting, perpetual hustle.
You start every single month at zero.
Yes. You have to hunt for new leads, write custom proposals, endure agonizing price negotiations, manually deliver the bespoke service, and then chase down the client just to get your invoice paid.
It is highly physical, emotionally draining work, and the moment you stop hustling, the revenue drops to zero.
It is the hamster wheel of commerce.
Exactly. Subscription brain, conversely, requires an engineering mindset. You aren't just doing work, you are designing a complex, highly leveraged system.
So it's not that it is devoid of hard work, it's that the location of the hard work shifts.
Precisely. The membership model requires immense intellectual heavy lifting up front. You have to design the multi-format architecture, integrate the payment gateways, set up the paywalls, initiate the forums, and seed the platform with hours of foundational, high-quality content before a single person ever subscribes.
It's like building the engine of a car from scratch. It's grueling.
But once that engine is built and the flywheel begins to spin, the physics of your business change. The effort required no longer scales linearly with the revenue.
Expand on that. That's the key to the whole thing.
If you are a consultant operating on traditional brawn and you want to double your income, you have to find twice as many clients and work twice as many hours.
Which is physically impossible after a certain point.
Right. But with a membership site, whether you have 10 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers, setting up the lighting, hitting record, and conducting that 1-hour video interview takes the exact same amount of time and energy.
The cost of replication is zero. And ironically, the forum management, which sounds like the most labor-intensive part, actually gets easier as the site grows.
Wait, really? How does it get easier?
When you have 50 members, you have to prompt every conversation to keep it alive. But when you have 5,000 members, the community reaches critical mass. It begins to police itself. Members answer each other's questions within minutes. It becomes a self-sustaining organism.
You trade the visceral, monthly panic of the sales hustle for the intellectual challenge of managing a predictable system.
The ultimate reward of the subscription brain is peace of mind. The entrepreneur can finally sleep through the night, knowing with a high degree of mathematical certainty exactly how much revenue will hit their bank account on the first of the month, regardless of whether they make a new sale that day or not.
So the overarching practical takeaway for anyone ready to build is, do not just build a paywall and dump text on a page. You are not writing a book. You're building an interactive ecosystem.
Give your audience multiple, frictionless ways to consume your expertise, and most importantly, give them a vibrant town square to talk to each other.
When they forge deep relationships with other members facing the exact same struggles, canceling their subscription no longer means just losing access to a video archive. Canceling means excommunicating themselves from their most valuable peer group.
And that is how you drive churn down to the absolute floor. It transforms a digital product into an emotional necessity.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and survey the entire landscape we've unpacked today, from the collapse of traditional publishing to the rise of the hyper-niche, from B2B resilience to the mechanics of the 3-month cross-sell, I think we can distill the entire philosophy down to one profound shift in identity.
I agree completely.
The absolute soul of the membership website model is that it forces you to stop acting like a vendor of a commodity. A vendor is always subservient to the transaction, always hustling, always negotiating their worth. This model demands that you step up and become the mayor of a digital town.
I think the mayor analogy perfectly encapsulates the responsibility and the leverage of the model.
By taking your most specialized, hard-won, constantly evolving knowledge and having the courage to gate it, you do something remarkable. You filter out the noise, the trolls, and the freebie seekers of the open internet.
You attract a highly invested, curated community of people who deeply value what you know.
And in doing so, you build a scalable, predictable asset that frees you from the daily grind, allows you to cross-sell effortlessly, and creates a walled garden that the giants of your industry will eventually pay millions to access.
It is a blueprint that fundamentally alters the trajectory of your business and, quite frankly, your life as an entrepreneur. But as elegant and powerful as this model is, exploring it naturally raises one final, glaring question that we haven't really addressed.
Oh, what's the blind spot?
Well, we have spent this entire deep dive operating under one massive assumption. We've talked about baiting your own expertise.
Right.
Whether you are a master woodworker, a veteran dance studio owner, or a plumbing sales guru, the entire model assumes that you already have a treasure trove of specialized knowledge sitting inside your head ready to be monetized.
Right. You have to actually be the expert.
What if you aren't? What if you are a hungry entrepreneur looking to build an automated recurring cash engine, but you don't actually have any unique hyper-niche expertise of your own to share? Does that mean you are locked out of the subscription economy?
That's a scary thought for a lot of people.
What if there was a way to build a massive, highly lucrative membership business using entirely other people's content?
Now, that is a truly provocative thought.
Yeah.
How on earth do you rent out access to a library that you didn't even write without getting sued or laughed out of the room?
Yeah.
Well, that is exactly the secret behind our next deep dive into what Warlow calls the all-you-can-eat library model. We are going to explore how brilliant startups are bootstrapping massive, gated content libraries without spending a dime of their own money to create the material. You won't want to miss how they pull off that magic trick. See you next time.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.